are going to get started in about 5 minutes. 3 minutes. What's that? Right. They're dialing it in the back. Oh, that's much better. Okay. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Welcome. Oh, it's already quiet. Just a couple of minutes, we'll let people in. All right. People.
First person is not here yet.
First person?
Our first speaker.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just trying to find a freshman.
Who is that? Oh, yeah.
We're just trying to find
Okay, all right. Nothing else? Good, all right. Good, good. So pop up here. Yep. All right, much better. Can you hear it in the back? Okay, great. All right, well, this is exciting. We've got a whole evening of Polymer talks ready, queued up for you. We have 8 speakers, 4 talks. One of them has multiple demos, and a Q&A panel at the end. So, welcome. How many of you are first-time members of SFHTML5? All right, it's getting less and less. That's great. So we've been around, and those of you that have been here more often have heard this before. But we actually just had our 4-year anniversary. All right, and we had some really great, nice round number milestones at that exactly at that 4-year anniversary. We had hosted 100 events in the San Francisco community. We reached, as you can see, 10,000 members and 1 million views on our YouTube content. So that's all that content. You can find it of any of our talks at bit.ly, SFHTML5 videos. Of course, a few things like workshops and so on. We're not recording those, but we've recorded every event since the beginning of the group. We post those on YouTube, usually a week after. This actually will be available almost immediately after this event, and then we're going to chop it up in little pieces per talk. Great. So tonight, I hope you all received that little swag item. You can actually turn that into a Polymer logo. If you do that and you tweet or post a picture of that, you are in the running to win some amazing prizes. We have tablets, Chromebooks, Beats by Dre, books, lots of stuff, and wine as well. Hope you checked out some of the wine from Grant Eddy. There's great stuff. They've driven 3 hours to get here with all the wine. There's still more wine left at the break. Definitely check it out. Okay, if you have questions, if you're here, of course you can ask questions. We'll take a question from the moderator, followed by a question from here in the audience at the very end with the complete panel of all the speakers. And you can tweet bit.ly Polymer questions to your friends. If they have any questions, they might ask or vote for questions on that. All right, if you enjoyed the music, that's my son, Rocky Lubbers. You can follow him on SoundCloud. Yeah. He is also available for hire. All right, so I know we all want to get into the Polymer stuff. I want to thank a couple of the sponsors here, without whom it would not be possible to put on these great free events. The first one, of course, maybe we can have a round of applause for Google for the venue, the food, the wine, and all of the great stuff. So let's hear it for Google. So on top of all of this great stuff, they're also going to give you $500, but it's a cloud platform credit. So you can actually get your sites up and running pretty quickly, App Engine, Compute Engine, all of that great stuff. If you want to try that out, SFHTML5 is the code. You can go to g.co Cloud Starter Pack to check that out. All right, so at Google, I work in developer relations team. Actually worked with people like Colt, one of our former speakers, Sean Bennett, right here in the audience. We also focus a lot on developer education, and we have launched up to now 2 Udacity. We teamed up with the Udacity folks to launch 2 MOOC training courses. One of them has already over 100,000 people enrolled. That's the HTML5 gaming course, and a little bit more on that later. The other one is getting pretty close to 50,000 people enrolled. It's really great to see. Definitely check those courses out. It's a mobile web development course that we just launched in January, and we're actively working on new courses coming out soon. Okay, I want to thank a small line of sponsors here, and then we'll get right into it. So the first sponsor is Kazing, one of our founding sponsors. They are hiring. They are focused on WebSocket technology. They have a very cutting-edge, high-performance WebSocket server. Check it out at kazing.com. Next up, we have Intel. They are actually going to do a short 2-minute lightning talk at the end of the break, so we'll hear more from them. Then we have Adobe, and Adobe's been with us for a long time, a very great sponsor. Modern.ie. Chewy, tell us a little bit about Modern.ie.
Actually, I'm going to say something else. You guys are all very friendly here. I was standing in line. A bunch of you guys walked up and said hello. So I thought I'd use this opportunity to not talk about Modern.ie, but tell you that I'm hiring a community manager. I'm on the Internet Explorer team. We're looking for people who loves people, foster community, and can make cool shit happen. Actually, can I say shit? There we go. Okay, sorry. And one of my colleagues who recently moved up here, moved up to Seattle from San Francisco, told me to tell you guys this. There is no state income tax. There is no city tax. And you're 3 hours from Portland with great donuts and no sales tax. Think about it. My name is Chewy Chung. I'm sitting right back there. Come look for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Chewy. That's great. So one of the lightning talks, or one of the demos later on will be from Salesforce. They're actually using Polymer in a real application, as far as I understand. Here to tell us a little bit more about Salesforce platform.
Hello, my name is Lauren Grau. I work on the developer relation team at Salesforce.com. We have a few of our Salesforce gurus here. If you put your hands up, you guys might be familiar with the CRM side of Salesforce, but we're here to talk about the platform side. So if you're looking at building web and mobile apps on a secure enterprise platform, there's a bunch of gurus here to talk to. So stop by our booth for some stickers and shirts, and go to developer.salesforce.com to learn more about our platform. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. All right, HTML5 Developer Conference is back. May 22nd, it's just around the corner. Anne is actually still walking around. They're actually giving us 2 tickets to raffle off at the raffle at the very end. So hang on to those tickets.
Okay. Hi, yeah, we have a very strong conference in architecture coming up in 3 weeks. And we're happy that Alex Russell is popping in. He's from Google. He's one of the guys that's behind some of the architecture that you're going to see tonight, Promises, Service Workers. We've got PPK, Peter Paul Koch, coming all the way from Europe. Was doing mobile before any of us were. Rob Dodson, Google Polymer. And Steve Souders, Web Components Performance. So that's kind of going to be an interesting take on it. Steve Newcomb, I don't know how many of you have been following Famous at all. Famous people? They're finally releasing, and so we have 2 classes with them. They're both full, but we do have a hackathon, and they will be training on that. And so from the game side and from performance side, I'm definitely going to check that out. That's going to be fun. And all the way from Canada, we've got Ted Livingston, CEO of Kik Messenger, has a whole new approach where mobile will be pushing the web apps. So in his case, it's the messaging platforms, and you guys on top of it can have your apps. So really strong and interesting architecture in a few weeks. And if you are a speaker person, we're back again in October, so we'll have a call for speakers. And that'll be 2 days at Moscone again. So hope to see you there.
Great. Thanks, Anne. All right, our next event, this is something I'll let you in on this little secret. We actually just posted this event, but we haven't announced it to the group. So if you're on the live stream or here, you can go to sfhtml5.org, sign up for an incredible web security event next month, same place, same exact setup. So it's going to be great. We have Parisa Tabriz, who's the security princess in the Chrome team, and some really hardcore hackers. Some great stuff coming up. That's an event you don't want to miss either. So sign up today. It'll be published pretty soon. All right, Leap Motion is going to also do a short talk later, but tell me.
Hi, so I'm Peter Ehrlich. I maintain the Leap.js, the Leap JavaScript library that lets Leap work in any web browser. So we have a table set up back there over out the door on the left, where we are showing off some of our V2 private beta tracking. We've got a 3D hand running on Three.js in the web browser, and we're happy to show you how you can do that in 4 lines of code. Also, we have a keyboard with a leap in it. That's it.
Great, thanks. All right, next up, Lude. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are up to lately.
Hello, yeah, my name is Iker Jamardo, and I'm from Lude. What we offer is services for HTML5 developers. We were mainly focused for HTML5 game developers, and soon we're going to release our platform, and we are announcing it. And actually, you can even test it right now, also for app developers. We are trying to help you deploy everywhere, accelerate your HTML5, and also monetize your applications and games. And we have a booth out there, so if you want to come, we're just showing some of the games that we have in WebGL, even in iOS. So you can just come and check it out.
Okay, thank you. All right, PubNub. Real-time data.
Hey everybody, my name's Dave. I work at PubNub. So we're a global real-time network. We have 14 data centers around the world. We work on a pub-sub model. You can send data from one place to another reliably, consistently, as fast as possible. One thing I wanted to mention tonight was our developer program. So we're actually giving away $2,500 per month in PubNub credit to developers for free for 12 months. You can figure out a way to integrate PubNub into your applications. That's up to $30,000 in a year. That'll get you about 30 billion messages, and that's totally free. And then after that, we hope it's valuable enough for you to keep using it and maybe pay us some money.
All right. Only 30 billion? All right, so one of our other sponsors is Bounty Source, and we thank them, and Matrix, and Moboom. Boom.
Awesome. Hey everyone, my name's Todd from Moboom. I'm the client integration manager. Moboom is a CMS system. It's adaptive and responsive technology. We've really tried to make it as easy as possible for users to go into the platform and start building a site. It really doesn't matter on your level, whether you're a developer or just a marketing person, doesn't really matter. We're actually giving away a free site for every person here. Just come over to our booth and fill out a form, and we'll get you hooked up for a year. Great, thanks.
Great, thanks. All right, and our final sponsor for tonight, Sony.
Hi, my name is Kevin Campbell. That's loud. I'm from Sony Network Entertainment. We're here in San Francisco, south of Market. We built the PlayStation 4 interface using WebGL and JavaScript web technology stack. We are going to be talking a little bit later about some of the work we've been doing with Polymer inside, and we are hiring. So come by our booth, come check out what we do.
All right, thanks, Kevin. All right, then one quick announcement. This week, a few of us got together, some former SFHTML5 speakers and a whole host of other speakers. Sean Bennett right here in the audience, Don Olmsted, John McCutcheon, Tyler Smith. Those are just some of the former SFHTML5 speakers. So we released a book called HTML5 Game Development Insights. You can go to bit.ly HTML5 Game Dev Book and get 40% off of the ebook. So definitely check that out. We just released it this week. Okay, hang on to those tickets. We've got, like I said, we have some great prizes. I see tablets, I see books, signed books, as well as some others, some really good stuff. And without further ado, I want to hand it over to Eric. So Eric is a developer programs engineer. Yes? Yeah. So I've been trying to get Eric to come speak at SFHTML5 from like day one. And it always sort of figured a way out to not come in. One time we almost had Eric, and then he sent Paul Kinlan, which was also great. So then finally I said, well, maybe it'll be better if I joined Google to get Eric. And it's still hard, but now he's finally here. Thanks, Eric. So come on up, and we can get started.
I heard there was all these prizes here that I can't participate in.
And yeah.
That's all right. Thanks, man. Hey, guys. I bet you didn't know you were going to join a revolution tonight, but it's totally here, the Web Components revolution. I'm super excited about it. I've been working on this stuff for now a couple of years. And let me bump this up for you. My name's, just so you know who you're talking to, Peter introduced me, but I'll introduce myself again. My name's Eric Bidelman. I work on the Chrome team. I work on Polymer. I think Web Components are the bee's knees. It's going to change the way we develop for the web. Hopefully by the end of the night, it's a long night. There's going to be a lot of cool demos, a lot of cool examples. My goal to you tonight is to sort of sell you on the value proposition of Web Components, what problems it solves, what issues it's addressing in web development. I can't really spend enough time on the lower level tech in 25 minutes, so feel free to tweet at me, Google Plus me, follow, check out the HTML5 Rocks articles. There's a lot of really good stuff there to read about. So what's the need for Web Components? Why are we having a 4-hour event for you guys to even grok all that? And to really understand sort of where we're going with Web Components, you have to actually understand where we've been. So once upon a time, I present you the web, right? This is how the web looked. And we had a bunch of stuff that we kind of pieced together, maybe some JavaScript here, some HTML here. And it looked like this. It was a mess, right? It was coming from all over the place. And then, of course, right, like HTML5 came along. This was like, this is going to solve all the problems, right? This is going to cure cancer. It's going to solve world peace. And it did. The industry got really, really stoked about it, and we're still stoked about it. And stuff just kept getting added and added. And so we added WebRTC and Web Audio API and all these really rich APIs in order to have a more powerful platform. And that's great. But oh no, his T-Rex head is cut off. This is great, but it's a lot of overkill for us regular developers. I'm a regular developer. I don't need the WebRTC capabilities all the time. What about my productivity? What about useful stuff for me to develop? And so the journey starts in 2010. Some really smart people. Dmitry Glaskov, actually, I call him one of the godfathers of Web Components, sent a note to the public web apps mailing list. This is the mailing list for general new stuff. That's Appy. And he was like, hey, I've been thinking about this a long time with some other folks. We need things in the platform like templating. Why can't we do proper templating in the browser? Why does everybody do it differently? Shadow DOM, the ability to actually scope and encapsulate certain chunks of markup in CSS. This was 4 years ago, right? This has been a long, long journey since this time, but it's kind of really interesting to go back in the archives and see this stuff actually play out. So what's happened? So over the years, right, all these specifications that there's been a lot of contributions to, they basically said, hey, let's strip the platform back. Let's decide what are the API primitives that are really, really useful for developers, that are going to make you, myself included, very productive. So let's take HTML5. Let's pull back the covers, strip it down, and identify the layers of the platform that we really need in order to make it a really powerful, productive application building platform. And so this is where the Web Component specs come in, right? Let's add all this really low-level stuff so it can enable the next generation of frameworks on the web. Of course, developers can tweak it. They can do whatever they want with it. This stuff can be composed and used together, but that's really where the power is. We're giving all these tools in this utility belt for you to develop the next generation applications. So web components, at its core, the way I think of it is a set of emerging standards, and it allows developers to extend HTML. It allows you to say, hey, browser, there's this new thing you should know about, essentially. It's got functionality, it's got an API, it's got markup, it's got CSS, and wrap all that up and deliver that and have other people use it. So it's really, really important that we kind of take away all the stuff you're going to see today, all the stuff I'm showing you, all the stuff the great presenters that will follow will show you it's all based on these standards. It's all W3C standards. So it's not some kind of proprietary thing. It's stuff that you can use, right? You can use the native vanilla stuff if you want. You can use the Polymer for extra sugaring or X tags or these other options. That's really the awesome bit about this. And so the standards involved here, 4 main standards when you kind of break it apart. The first is templates, right? This is actually being able to do proper DOM-based templating in the browser. So you can say, I want this section of markup to be used later, and then stamp that out as you create different elements and components. Custom elements, this is sort of the bread and butter, right? Being able to tell the browser, I want to create a new tag. I want to create my awesome button tag, or my X tabs tag. Being able to tell the browser about this tag and give it an API that everybody can tap into is really what that's all about. And Shadow DOM is sort of one of these foundational pieces that's again, useful by itself, as all of these APIs are, but it really allows us to encapsulate and scope the problem to your component. So for instance, if you define CSS in a web component, it's not going to bleed out. This is great, right? As an author, you want some guarantees that what you've worked so hard on is not going to just bleed out into the outside world. And then the page is not going to affect the way your component looks, right? That's really important. So you can stick markup in a component and CSS in a component, and you're guaranteed to have this scoping to that component. And the last one is one of these sort of really, really nice APIs you've never had before. We should have. HTML imports. You can load up, you can bundle your CSS and your JavaScript and your HTML together and deliver that via a single URL that somebody can use, and then they can use your component. So that's really, really cool, because we can package all this stuff in a single bundle and then deliver that. Support for this is totally accelerating across the board. This matrix a year ago was pretty crappy, to be quite frank with you. But today with polyfills and the polyfills the Polymer team has built, you can absolutely use all of this stuff in any of these modern browsers. So the moral of the story is, there's no excuse not to play with web components. It's 2014, and that revolution is here. So those are the standards, but I want to focus now on custom elements. I think this is one of the foundational pieces of what web components is all about. So in order to understand custom elements, you actually have to take another voyage back in time. So this is the web today, at least what Google.com looks like. Let's throw it back to 1998. This is what Google.com looked like in 1998. It's totally primitive, right? The buttons look crappy. There wasn't any CSS really available to us. Larry and Sergey came up with this. This was what Google looked like. This is probably what your web app looked like, right? The web was built on forms. This was like an app of the time. And so you can put an input on it. It's pretty cool, and you can type in here. And this is neat, right? There's a select element on this form, and this is kind of like the first example of a component, right? I declare this on my page, and I get this native little browser widget, this little component control, and I don't know how it's done. It happens. So that's cool. What's going on there? And of course, you submit this form, and somehow it magically it posts to a server, and it does all this black magic under the hood. So it's doing stuff that is transparent to me as a user. Oh yeah, Selectee. Selectee's going to help us build this web app. Selectee is Cliffy's cousin. He likes to jiggle around. So back then, right, elements were very declarative, and a really good example again is this select element. It's actually got a lot of stuff built into it. So let's take select. Let's look at it. I declare it on my page. I throw some option elements in there, and again, all I get is this really cool little widget for free, right? I don't write any CS or JavaScript. This kind of just happens for me. And it's got this hover state, it's got this checkbox, and this other UI around it. So literally just by declaring this on the page, I get a component, right? The first sort of browser native component. I can also configure this thing. So it takes HTML attributes. So if I put a disabled attribute on the option or a selected attribute on the option, boom, this thing knows what to do with that. It knows how to render that in a different way. And it does exactly what you expect. You can read this code and say, oh yeah, those first 2 or 3 options are disabled, and that last one should be selected. So the important thing here is it's still declarative, right? We're not writing any script to set this or render anything. It's literally just markup. Selectee's super excited about that. And we can ultimately change the way this thing behaves just by using attributes as well. If you move attributes up to the select tag, give it a size, give it multiple attribute, we don't even have a drop-down. We have this multi-select widget, which is really cool. So depending on how the user wants to interact with this, we can totally, it can represent itself in different ways. And again, that's all transparent to us. We don't know how this is happening, but it's just happening. You can compose elements. So what does that actually mean? Well, select, right? It takes options, like you saw in the last example, but it also does some other stuff. You can give it an opt-grouped element, and it itself can be configured via attributes. So now, exactly as you expect, this does something different based on the children elements it gets. So now we have groupings instead of just a straight drop-down list. You can also take this and put it in an entirely different context. So I can take my select, which is a component essentially, and if I put that in a form element, this thing knows, somehow the browser knows that it's going to get submitted with this form, and it's going to include the value that the user's chosen. So select is telling us, in different contexts, it takes on different responsibilities, so it's composable in different contexts. Now, not everything makes sense in markup. Certainly, I'm not arguing that. In certain cases, right, you're going to want to respond to certain events, right? This element happens to fire a change event when something interesting happens, which is when the user selects a new option. It exposes properties on its DOM interface that don't really make sense in markup, right? You don't really think about a selected index in markup. What would that even look like or mean? But you should be able to poke at that maybe and tweak in JavaScript or do something interesting. So the properties and methods, it fires events. These are really, really core things to what the bare bones elements gave us at the time. So what happened? This sounds pretty good. I don't know, if it sounds good to you guys, but this is super easy to use. I can read all that code and know exactly what's going on. Well, this happened, right? This mess happened. This is an example of opening DevTools and seeing what Gmail looks like, right? One of the most complex web applications, I would say, out there. And what happened was that the HTML and markup actually didn't keep up with the time, right? It wasn't expressive enough for us developers to actually describe the complex applications we were starting to build on the web. So you end up with div soup, and that's okay. This has gotten us pretty far, but can anybody read this? Do they know what's going on? I mean, maybe they purposely obfuscated it, but I certainly can't. It's not maintainable. You don't know what's going on. It's not descriptive or semantic in any way. And on the other side of the fence, right? This is Google plus photo application. We just wrote just a crap ton of JavaScript. I'll be completely honest. This is the only thing we had as a tool to actually get the job done. So we're in a sad state of affairs. It's not just complex applications. If you take a look at, I think, the quintessential example of a component, a tab component, right? There's a bazillion tab components out there. This is what happened over time. So we had a bunch of markup, right? We annotated it with some IDs or something, and at the bottom we wrote a little bit of script, just a little bit, to say, hey, render this thing that I just threw together as a tab somehow. And it worked, right? And over time, what progressively happened was each framework and library and author, they just developed different ways to do the exact same thing, right? So this is 5 different ways to build a tab component. Every API is different. Every way to do it is different. As a developer, I have to learn, I have to buy in and learn this new API and way to do something. When ultimately, what I want is just a standard way to create a component. So that is what web components is all about. The ability to actually create a new element, say x-tabs, make it composable, make it configurable via attributes, tell the browser about this new thing. And as a user, right, who knows what this is supposed to do? I mean, maybe it's not obvious, but I think it's supposed to be a tabs widget, right? And it's super descriptive, and you absolutely know just by looking at the code, just by looking at the markup, what it's supposed to do. So that's an example. Let's take a look at actually a real example. The Polymer team threw together this Google Map element, and how many people, who can guess what this does? Right? I don't even need to describe it to you, but I'll tell you what it does. I'll show you what it does. It renders a map, right? It uses the Maps API under the hood, but as a user of this thing, all that I do is just declare this on my page. That's pretty sweet. I don't have to know the complexities of that API. I don't have to worry about loading libraries, going through these callback dances. All of that is totally transparent to me, abstracted away inside of this component. Again, just in the example of select, we can configure this to take attributes. So same rules apply to custom elements. This map element, when you give it a lat and a longitude, it knows under the hood, right, to call the Maps API, center itself, and that's exactly what you see there. It's got a zoom attribute that we can give it, so it knows to zoom at level 15 when you set that on the attribute and declare that on your page. This thing is also composable. So inside of the Google Map element, I can stick Google Map marker tags, and this map element knows how to deal with those tags. It knows that it should place a map marker at this lat and this long. What's also cool about this is I'm using other parts of the platform that already exist. So, the title attribute, right? This is a standard HTML attribute. I can use that, since we're just talking HTML and DOM, I can use that on my own custom elements as well. And you can see when I mouse over this map marker, it has the title home, just as you expect, right? So I'm using parts of the platform that already existed. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. HTML5 drag and drop is an absolute mess. I hate it, but you can actually reuse it in this case as well. It's kind of cool. You can respond to the draggable attribute. And if it's true, right, under the hood, you can drag this pin. And the VAPS API, of course, is doing the work, but I don't need to know that as a user of this component. I just rock the declarative option. Boom, I get the Maps API. And of course, you can add further markup to this page, and it knows what to adjust to the children. A really common thing to do, actually, in the API that I wanted to do for this demo is, as I add more markers to this map element, I want to center those in the viewport. And that's actually a pretty common thing to do in the Maps API if you guys have ever played with it. But it's a little bit of boiler code, and I had to actually go and reread that stuff and figure out how to do that again. So instead, what can happen if I have marker up the screen, I can expose that as sort of a way for users to configure this thing. So when I have the shrink to markers attribute on, right, somebody declares that, the map just knows, and you totally can't see it, sorry, it's off screen, but it just knows to center those two markers on the screen. And of course, if I add new ones, in this case, you can see it does center the map. So again, just by declaratively configuring this custom element, the map knows what to do under the hood, and that's, I think, really, really powerful. So this could be the future of how you use Google Maps. At least I think it's really exciting. So what does this all enable? You've seen it, right? You can be declarative again. We can use HTML to our advantage. We kind of pushed HTML under the carpet for a long time, but we can actually rise it up, and it can rise up to the occasion now. We can make it do whatever we want, which is really cool. Things are composable. In different contexts, you can take a component here and a component here, mesh them together to form a larger application. So again, you're not kind of reinventing the wheel every time. You're building stuff and reusing stuff somebody else has done. Scoping. This is huge. Right? CSS scoping, the ability to actually define a component with a section of CSS and not have it bleed out or things bleed in. We've never had that before. And it's totally different than an iframe, too. Iframes are crazy complex, and it's overhead, and it's hard to script into. This is awesome, right? You get CSS encapsulation, DOM encapsulation, and the ability to define an API on a per-component basis. So we're not building apps in this global context anymore, where you've thrown in libraries here, and JavaScript there, and CSS over here. You actually can think about what is the functionality you need and how to get that job done. So this unlocks a totally new way to develop for the web. The first mind-bending thing that I had to wrap my head around was it's a new way to use HTML, and I think you've probably seen some examples there already. But let's take a look at what exists today and then compare it to tomorrow. So if you think about HTML elements, right, this is the standard kind of set that exists today. You have things like input, right? You have the select. We saw these before. The progress tag. This is pretty cool. You get a little, a rendering little progress bar for free from the browser. Text area, button, video controls. All of these render a UI to the screen, something that users of your website would see. But there's this whole sort of other side to elements that people don't really think about too much, and it's really things that developers see a lot. These are all elements, these are examples of elements that don't actually render any UI. But what do? They provide utility. They do something, right? We use them for some reason on our page, in our app, but they don't actually show anything. So for example, if I put a script tag right in the page, the browser knows whatever's in that script tag, it's going to evaluate as JavaScript and run that, and it does something. It serves a purpose, but it doesn't actually show anything to the user. And we can totally do the same thing with custom elements, right? And this is sort of a mind-bending thing, like I said, but we can wrap up pieces of functionality that we're used to using in JavaScript and actually provide a declarative way to interact with those services, those APIs, and those libraries. A really good example that we put together in the Polymer team was the core AJAX component. I never have to write boilerplate AJAX code again. I just put this on my page, and I can use it. I give it a URL, configured via an attribute again. I respond to some events. I'm using my same bag of tricks, right? Querying the DOM, query selector, adding event listeners. This is the stuff I know how to do as a web developer. And the other example here is geolocation. I don't have to do crazy callback hell. I can wrap all that magic up inside, and the implementation detail is totally transparent to me. So non-visual custom elements. That's pretty cool. Interoperability. Maybe people don't care about interoperability, but it's actually the first time we can have proper interoperability on the web. And I call it on by default. So you get it for free if you buy into this component model. The fact that we're speaking HTML and DOM again, right? Every framework, every library out there on the planet, every developer that has ever touched anything on the web knows HTML and it knows about DOM. So it speaks that same language. So what you can do is you can pose different elements together from all over the place. The xtags xflipbox element, for instance, I can put inside of that a Polymer element. And it's important to note, like, it doesn't matter that this element was implemented using Polymer and the other one is implemented using xtags. It's the fact that they can actually talk to each other because it's all just DOM and it's all just HTML under the hood. And then you can use the same things you use all over the place, right? jQuery or querying the DOM, adding event listeners. The stuff that we already know as web developers, we can translate into this new world. DevTools support. OMG, this is huge. The tools know DOM. The DevTools are really good about DOM, right? There's all this power in the DevTools. This is an example from our homepage, our polymerproject.org. It's a little tabs component. When you click these tabs, right, it changes the code snippet. Really kind of a trivial component. But what's really neat is I can, query, I can open the DevTools, and since we're talking HTML and DOM, it's all DOM-based, I can drill at those, and I can inspect elements, and I can use the tools to my advantage to debug issues. I can bring up the console and actually, do live coding and query selector for things and like change attribute properties. And as you can see, I can update the selected property under the hood, so everything's live because it's all in the DOM, and it's all just speaking, JavaScript. I can use the DevTools to change the styles of this element too, right? Because it's just markup. The DevTools and the browser knows how to handle that stuff. So this is really cool. With other stuff out there, it's been notoriously hard to do things like this because it's all just a first-class citizen in the browser now. You've told the browser about this demo tabs element, and it knows how to deal with that. Extensibility. I'm going to go through this really quickly, but you saw the maps example, right? I actually didn't build that maps component. There was a component out there that somebody built. It rendered a map to the screen. It had nothing to do, it had no idea about how to render markers. But I said, hey, it makes sense to put markers on a Google map, so we should combine that. So in Polymer, it's really easy to, and in custom elements, it's really easy to extend an element. You just say, hey, extend the Google map tag. And I'm going to create a new tag called map with markers, right? And I'm going to give it a new API, add to the API that somebody else gave me. I'm going to inherit that. I'm going to inherit its UI. It's going to render my map for me. But I'm just going to be able to stick the map markers on the map. So that's really cool, because again, like the message here is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I didn't care how that maps API, that maps component was made. I just started using it. All right, so that's the universe. The universe is one that's declarative and composable and configured via attributes, and it's using events, and it's using DOM. I think this is really powerful. This is a cool demo that I'll just play before I go. John McCutcheon put this together. It's a WebGL demo, and he used the Polymer Dart port. He's got basically implemented WebGL calls using custom elements and markup. So you can see what I'm doing here is in the DevTools, since there's first-class support, I can edit attributes, and things just update magically right in the WebGL scene. I absolutely know nothing about WebGL. So this is really cool to me, because I know everything about JavaScript and HTML. I can go up and change a texture of one of these 3D spheres just by changing an attribute. Right? It points to a JPEG file. And I can change that to something else, and now Web Components is the center of the universe. So that's really great, because he's totally wrapped up his library and his complex stuff, and I can just use it. So that's all I got. I think this stuff is really cool. I think we should all componentize the web. Let's join the revolution together. That's all for me. Feel free to tweet at me and talk to me after the show. Appreciate the time, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Great. All right. Well, we're switching laptops here and have Matt McNulty come up. So Matt leads the Polymer effort at Google, the engineering team, and he's going to talk to us about the introduction to Polymer. After that, we're going to have about a 20-minute break or so. We'll have a couple of quick lightning talks at the end of the break, and then we'll dive into the second half of the evening. A couple of quick links. There are a couple of people there tweeting some great posts with the Polymer logo. There are some very creative ones already. You can still do that, also during the break. And bit.ly Polymer live stream is how you can tell your friends that you're in this yourself. And bit.ly Polymer questions, I believe it is. Bit.ly Polymer questions if you want to ask questions on the live stream. So you can ask and vote for questions on that. And of course, here live, we'll take live questions from the audience as well. All right. Thanks, Matt. Take it away.
Is this thing on? There we go. All right. I'm Matt McNulty. I lead the Polymer team here at Google. That's a little small. I blame Eric. He actually made these slides. Not the slides, but the framework for them. So an interesting, my Twitter handle is there. Feel free to tweet at me anytime. About every 3 months or so, I start getting tweets from mostly women in the UK saying that they love me. Because apparently there's an actor there whose name is also Matt McNulty, and they follow me instead. So feel free to tweet at me because I think my most recent 10 tweets or so are all about that because I have to repeatedly point out that I'm not an actor. But yeah, so apparently he's been in something that's not so great right now. But there's still a few people that love him apparently. So it's a nice little ego stroke. So first thing I want to show you, we have this designer tool, and we showed it the beginnings of it at I/O last year, and it's evolved quite a bit since then. It's actually all new code since then. And a few people are going to be showing it tonight, so I just wanted to introduce it really quickly. So this is like what Steve Jobs would call a hobby, right? This is not actually our thing we're working on, but it's particularly useful for showing off components, right? Eric talked about it for a little while, just about how composable these things are and how interop works and how it's really, really awesome that you can do things like drag out a whole scaffold that's built into an element. And I can maximize it. And if I flip to the code view, which is very, very small as well, you can see that all that is really just a little bit of markup. So it's really, really pretty cool. And Rob's going to demo this a whole lot more in a little bit, as is Salesforce. So it'll be pretty cool for you. But I just kind of wanted to show that and just show how powerful Polymer is and how you can build a lot with just a little bit of markup. So how did I do that? Polymer. That's our pretty new logo that you all now have toys of, which is pretty awesome, by the way. We all spent about 4 hours trying to make them look like the logo. That's actually pretty challenging if you don't have something to work on. But so the big question is, what is Polymer? So Polymer is a library utilizing web components, which you just learned about, for building elements and applications. So that's a lot of words. None of them have a lot of meaning other than web components at this point. But components, elements, applications, like everyone talks about that. These are very generic words. So really, what is Polymer? So Polymer is actually a new kind of thing, right? This is something that we need to do a better job of explaining to people. So this is not like the things that have come before. Web components shipping is a major inflection point kind of in the history of web development. So there's going to be kind of the things that came before and the things that came after, and the way you build web applications is going to change regardless of whether you use Polymer or not. This is the future of web development, and it's the future we were always promised, right? Way back in the day, like this is the hoverboard. This is the thing that we were told, you can build applications this way. This is the way it's going to be, but it's actually here now. And the only thing out there that's in any way similar is actually Xtags, which Daniel Buchner is going to come and talk about in a little bit. Basically, everything else is, we're still out in front right now and just trying to figure this whole situation out. And these things haven't even shipped completely in the browser yet, so we're kind of out in front. So Polymer uses web components. Eric talked about web components quite a bit. But the major differentiator with Polymer and things that came before is Polymer doesn't paper over the platform. So as everyone in this room is probably painfully aware, frameworks have had to deal with an deficient web platform for a couple decades now. It doesn't provide enough functionality out of the box to be useful for people. And web components and object observe and a template tag change that because the platform doesn't need to be papered over anymore. So we came to Google to prove this. So to prove that the specs were good. We did a lot of work on that. And also prove that they're useful, that you can build something new out of this and that these things are useful right out of the box. So wait, Polymer isn't a framework? I keep calling it a library. I'm saying previous frameworks, things like that. It's a little confusing. So with Polymer, the thing we like to say is the framework is DOM, right? So instead of building a framework on top of the web platform, now that the web platform is extensible, now that it has scoping via Shadow DOM, you can actually build things and just use DOM methods again, right? So when we built Enyo, the fastest way to render something on the page was to splat out a big long string in inner HTML. And we came to Google and joined the Chrome team, and we're like, well, this is the fastest way. And they were like, no, it's not. And we went and looked, and it wasn't anymore. Like, they had actually made creating DOM nodes imperatively faster. So our mission here is to use the platform, and the platform is DOM. And DOM is much more functional now than it used to be. And our component model is custom elements, right? We don't need a component model built out of JavaScript because custom elements now provide that same functionality in the platform. And scoping, again, is provided by Shadow DOM. So a lot of people think that Shadow DOM provides a level of security, or that the JavaScript in it runs in a different context. And none of that's actually true. That would be useful for some cases. But what this really does is kind of the equivalent of classes in almost any other language, right? It's scoping that you can pierce the boundaries of if you really need to. And it's still really, really useful as is, even though this isn't quite what people might think it is by the name Shadow DOM. So am I hating on other frameworks? No, we actually wrote quite a few of them. So there's people on the team that helped write Dojo. We all wrote Enyo, and now we're here doing this. But there's a ton of great JS frameworks out there right now, and they all had to do like superhuman things in order to deal with the web platform the way it exists right now. They didn't work on the Chrome team. They didn't have web components. They didn't have any of that stuff. And in my opinion, actually, like, too much talent is being spent working on frameworks, like papering over deficiencies in the platform. And it's time to change that. It's time to give those people the ability to build stuff beyond frameworks that's actually, that's interoperable. So brief word about polyfills. So Eric touched on this briefly, but polyfills are kind of a bridge to the future that's available right now. Polyfills were also a lot of work to create. So we built those polyfills for web components and put them out there. About a year ago at I/O, when we unveiled Polymer with its current name and everything, we've been open source from the beginning. The polyfills represented about 80% of the work we had actually done to that point. So we presented it as all as Polymer, because this was new enough for everyone else. Turns out, like, the polyfills are really, they're something that is supposed to go away over time and is kind of a utilitarian thing. And they're not actually Polymer. They're not what we're providing. Polymer is the layer above the polyfills. So you see, I see it all the time where people are like, oh, Polymer is this layer, set of polyfills. That's actually not true. The polyfills were a means to an end. They're a bridge to the future platform. And the other thing about polyfills is that they actually focus on compatibility over everything else. Their goal is not performance. If you can make a really highly performant polyfill, you wouldn't need the native features. So a lot of times you get questions about that, and it's like, you know what? The idea is that Polymer works everywhere because of the polyfills, but it's awesome on Chrome because it has them native. All right, so let's dig into Polymer. So Polymer is a sugaring layer on top of the polyfills that lets you build your own element sets and apps. Again, sometimes we hear people say, oh, that's just for building elements, but it's actually for building everything if you want. Your element can be an input tag, your element can be an entire app, right? Eric did a great job of showing a bunch of examples of all that. And web components, like, why did we have to build Polymer? Well, web components are completely awesome, but by design, they're a really low-level primitive. I mean, it's in the name primitive. And that's the way primitives should be, right? They should be, maximally flexible, maximally powerful, and maybe not necessarily as focused on developer ergonomics. So using them together right now on their own is kind of tricky. There's a lot of boilerplate. There's a lot of ways that you can go wrong really, really quickly. Polymer's whole job is to make this way easier. So the other thing is Polymer is opinionated. So the things that are in the lower levels in the platform layer are standards track. But Polymer is where the opinion lies. And we actually did some changes here recently where a lot of the data binding stuff we have was down in the platform layer, and it's really not actually ready for standards track yet. So we pulled it up into Polymer. And it makes Polymer a little bigger, but it really streamlines our story and makes it really clear that that platform layer is intended to go away and go away fairly soon. And the other thing about Polymer is these are conventions. These aren't standards, right? These have not gone through the standards process. And as such, they represent our opinion, right? So what is that opinion? What's our philosophy? So components all the way down. Thank you, sir. So we like to build things out of smaller pieces and compose them together. And honestly, we feel like that's one of the major keys to building a really big scalable application. So a lot of people believe that strong typing is a key, and it definitely is. And one of the things that we believe is separation of concerns, right? If you got a developer and he can worry about just the small composable piece that's in front of him that has one job to do that's reusable, you can compose that into bigger and bigger pieces, right? Smaller reusable components, they compose into larger components, those components compose into applications. And you can put those applications wherever you want. And scoping enables this composition. And again, it's scoping. And Shadow DOM's about scoping, not security. Not that I'm trying to nail that home. So the other piece of Polymer is that everything is an element. So this is our implementation of components, right? Custom elements are the components of Polymer. We use them absolutely everywhere. Eric touched on this, right? We've got UI elements. We also have, you can wrap an API. We have a core local storage. And, local storage is a notoriously tricky API to deal with. And you can throw a core local storage element on your page, link to it using data binding from any data source, and it persists. And it's that simple. It's really like a couple mustache elements, and you're set. And even data, right? We started out like JSON is the format data should be in, and we decided to really push the envelope here and go, well, what if we actually store data in markup? I mean, it's basically JSON and markup are essentially the same thing with a different syntax. So, some of this we're probably pushing a little too far, and we have to really figure it out, but we're trying to really explore this. Everything is an element. Every single thing on your page is a composable piece you can construct other things with. And then finally, the last major philosophical piece is less code. So don't repeat yourself is a really big deal for us. And we want developers to only write code that's unique to their app or unique to their element and nothing else. Arguably, we're pretty successful with that, and you can always get better. And that data binding, including data binding, which we haven't done before, greatly reduces code, and it's generally just a really awesome thing. I think Rob's demo is really going to show that off really strongly. All right, so what's this world? I've been talking about what Polymer is, what isn't, and all these different layers. We have a nice fancy slide for that. All right, so native, the bottom layer is the browser today, right? And in reality, this is a super rough surface with a lot of nooks and crannies where demons and dragons hide, and it's really pretty awful. And the idea of the platform layer of platform.js is it's a set of polyfills that lets everyone build to the same standards and puts them across browsers today. And the idea is this big purple box goes away completely. Polymer is this middle layer. So Polymer is a layer of sugar on top, and it gives you an easy way to build these composable elements. But this is our opinion. This will never go away. This is the thing the value we're providing. And then what you build with it is elements. So from sets of elements to individual elements, and we're working on this kind of actively right now. So when we think about how to use Polymer, there's really kind of two major ways. Using elements is the first one. So we think that the vast majority of the world, they just want a particular element on their page, right? If they've got a button that's particularly cool, it has some progress indicator, and they want to put it on their website and not think about it. And that's going to be the vast majority of this kind of usage, right? Most people build selects, they don't recreate them from scratch. So this is kind of the majority case. But the majority case in this room and for developers is going to be creating elements. So we'll go over both of those. So using elements, we have a whole bunch of elements today. We've namespaced most of them core dash. We did a cleanup a couple of weeks ago where we put all the stuff that we weren't really concentrating on into a Polymer Labs organization and left everything in Polymer. And we originally had Polymer dash in every single element. And pretty much everyone who built Polymer elements kept calling their things Polymer dash. We realized that we needed to kind of set a good example. So core dash is just a namespace that we're using for core utility things that can be reused in a lot of different places. But it's just a convention. And then as Eric touched on as well, we have a whole bunch of non-visual elements that we've built in Polymer as well. I talked about core local storage before, and we have a whole bunch of others. And you can still see some Polymer dash stuff there that we haven't quite updated yet. I focused on this being an accurate slide as opposed to particularly sensical. And Polymer actually already has well over 100 elements at this point. You can actually check them out at the Polymer repo and then also the Polymer Labs organization. So to use an element, again, this is just kind of for everyone. The first step is to get the code. We tend to use Bower on the team, but you can also use, we have zips for everything. You can use GitHub. You can use whatever you want to use to get the code. So if you Bower an element, and then you include platform.js at the top of your page, and this is what gives you the platform. The polyfills will fall back to the native code automatically as it goes. And then you import the element. This is an HTML import that Eric showed you. You do link rel and then the name of the element, and it's a .html file for the first time, right? You're not importing JavaScript, you're importing HTML. And then once you do that, you can just use the element anywhere on your page, and it just works. So it's really that simple to get going. But now creating elements is where it gets interesting, and this gets to where Polymer provides a lot of value. So we've created a Polymer-element, and this is kind of the base class of Polymer that you use to define your elements. So this one in particular just has, it's really, really simple. It actually has the NoScript attribute in there. It's just a template. So everything inside, so Polymer element, it's creating an element named my-element, which when you use it is the tag name you use. And it just has a template. And the template has CSS and some HTML. And this is about as simple as it can get, and it just puts out hello for my element. If you inspect it, it's a my element. And this just works today. But you can add a prototype to it if you want to add behaviors, you want to add properties and methods to your element. So in this case, we added a method for say hello, and on a click, it's going to do alert howdy folks. And we're missing some of the code here to make it a little simpler to read, but if I click on it, it says howdy folks. And then data binding is another big piece that we do. So in this case, we have a property on the prototype called Rob, or called owner. That's default value is Rob. And then if you use the mustache syntax actually in the HTML, and there's no other setup you have to do, it will just work. So when it renders, it puts Rob built me with Polymer. But you can publish those properties too. So if you want to publish an API for your element, you can add it to the attributes attribute, which is cleverly named, of course. In this case, it has a default value, but when you use it, you can override that value. User of that element can use that API to override that value, and it does when it renders. All right, but wait, you say, how do I use this with X, where X is name a framework, name a technology, name some random thing that you found on the internet somewhere. So this is about interop, right? So Polymer elements are just custom elements. This is our story for this. And I put just in quotes because custom elements are really, really cool. Outside of the element boundary, so you have this element, it's got shadow DOM, so it's got some scope, has a boundary that can be pierced if you really want, but it's safe in there. Outside of that element boundary, looking in, they can be interacted with just like regular DOM elements. They have properties, they have methods, they have events. This is just useful. It's just like any other DOM element. Once you're inside that element boundary, that's where you get all the Polymer goodies. And the thing is, those Polymer goodies don't leak outside of that element boundary. So this lets Polymer play really nicely with lots and lots of other kinds of projects. So because you can just drop this element in, and it acts just like a regular DOM element. So for interop, it's a really, really good story. And you'll have instances where if you're inside of an element, there's things that need to know about shadow DOM. But basically, outside of the element, it's all good. You can share everything you want. Inside the element, you get all the goodies, but things have to be a little bit smarter. So the takeaway is this is a really, really big new thing. We're bootstrapping this ecosystem, and it's really for everyone. We're not going to be the first to do this, or the only people to do this. We expect a lot of other providers to do this, and individual developers to build elements and share them. We're creating technology for catalogs, standards for documentation, ways of distributing elements, and tooling, like we were showing you with the designer tool. And we're moving kind of on all of this all at once. And where we're going, so Polymer's in alpha right now. We said we were a pre-alpha for a fairly absurd amount of time. We changed that about 2 months ago now to alpha. We'll be beta once the native features ship in one browser. So what this looks like is Chrome 36, which is Canary right now. It'll be in the stable channel in the next 2 months. And then kind of at that point, we'll flip it to beta, because it's every time one of the native features comes in, there's a lot of churn right at the end where it works subtly differently than the polyfill does, and we have to reconcile the two. So we want to kind of avoid exposing people to that churn. But you'll see later on, right after me, right after the break, that there's a lot of crazy people who have actually built stuff on this already. And more power to them. So how can you help? You don't have to do a thing, because there's going to be a whole bunch of people here talking to you in a minute. You don't even have to move. Go to polymerproject.org and read more. You can tweet us. You can say you love us there, too. I'll assume you're talking about an actor. You can check us out on Stack Overflow. That's where we like all the questions to go. There's a Polymer dev mailing list. We really prefer the questions get there so everyone can see them. Build us something. Write an element, wrap an API, and share it. Join the revolution. And check back soon, because we'll be at Google I/O, and it'll be awesome to see you guys all there, too.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Okay, we're now going to have a short break. We'll open the door so we get a little bit more cool air in here. I'm working with the facilities to get the air conditioning cranked up to max volume. So we have a short break. Let's be back at 7:50, 10 to 8. Then we'll have lined up for you a great set of demos and lightning talks and another talk by Rob Dodson. Thank you. This one. All right. So go for it. All right. So we are going to get started again. Welcome back. So again, bit.ly Polymer live stream is our live stream URL. You can still be making pictures, and we'll be just like that. Perfect. I saw some pretty creative ones out there. All right. We have three short 2-minute lightning talks, and then we'll get into the next session. All right, take it away.
All right. So I'm Peter Ehrlich. I maintain the Leap.js, the JavaScript library that lets you do things like what you see right now. What you do see right now is a 3D WebGL rigged hand built on top of 3JS, which actually has support for a lot of these things. Not only is it a 3JS rigged hand, but it's Leap enabled also. So every single bone and joint in this hand can be controlled by Leap data, which is what you see right here. So as you see, I can move my hand, my finger, my pinky, and every little bone on the hand will move itself. That's pretty great. There's a bunch of funny stuff going on top of it that turns this into a drawing app. Over the next minute or 90 seconds, we will be unbuilding this app. The first thing to note is how this is built. Leap.js is built on top of a series of plugins or modules that make this really easy. We've got our Leap controller right here that connects over a WebSocket to the Leap service on your local machine and fires off hand events. This happens 60 times a second. So every moment it's checking how much the hand is pinching and then it's deciding either to move the cursor or actually draw the line. So that's what you're seeing right here. Move the cursor, there's no cursor, there's the cursor. It's sort of like very faint right now, and then you can draw the line. On top of that, there's all these plugins right here. It's using playback that's allowing it to automatically move. I can get rid of that. My page will automatically reload if I turn on live reload. And now it no longer moves, but I can still stick in my hand to draw stuff. Then there's other plugins in here. This one's measuring hand splay, for example, how flat a hand is. And that lets me do a gesture such as changing the color of the hand. So here I flatten out my hand, and I can move it and change the color of my brush just in place. I can turn that off, and the feature will go away. Boom. No more hand splay. So now my app's just that much simpler, and everyone knows simpler equals better. So let's see if I can remove more features. Relative motion, we needed that for hand splay. That sort of allowed me to calculate the two. And I think that's it. These are all available as modules in our private beta. There you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Grishma from the Intel XDK team. I don't know if you have tried Intel XDK. This is where you can get it, xdk.intel.com. It's absolutely free. So what is Intel XDK? It's a tool for creating mobile applications using HTML. It's actually a bunch of tools. We have a whole bunch of tools to help you with the development process, with the debug, testing, and finally packaging and building for mobile platforms. So you can build for iOS, Android, Windows, Firefox, whatever, name the stuff. So today I'll be talking briefly about what's new in the last few months. Mostly the first point, which was released just about a month back, is web services with App Designer. That is how to easily connect REST API and design your app even without a single bit of coding. And finally, remote debugging on Android and crosswalk-based Android builds. So this is a simple example. I'm not going too much into detail. I'll be sitting down there. Please come and check out. So this is a simple tab where you can get a simple REST API, and you can easily get this. You select what attributes of the REST API you want to use, and then you can hook it up easily into this simple designer tab. And within no time, you can actually create a mobile application which is ready to ship. It supports multi-page. You can have a simple mashup in about 2 minutes. If I had a demo, I would have done it, but unfortunately, it's only presentation. So these are all the different platforms we support, iOS, Android, Crosswalk, Windows, including web app, Chrome, Facebook, name it, it's there. So do check out xdk.intel.com, and the tool is absolutely free. Thank you.
Thank you. Don.
Yes. All right. Keep it rolling. Okay. Let me get over to the page. There we go. No, wrong one. Where's my talkie talk? It's so bad with. Yes, there we go. Okay. All right. So, Hi, my name's Don Olmsted. I'm a software engineer over at Sony Network Entertainment. And today I kind of want to give you guys a little demo of some of the fun things we've been working on. That being Polymer and Dart on the PS4. So if you were here in January, this was more or less our stack. I did a talk on WebGL for SFHTML5. So this is our stack. We use a custom UI framework, and it's on top of WebGL. But obviously, any software development team kind of wants to reevaluate themselves every once in a while to sort of figure out where things are going, what we should be doing. In this case, we spent some time looking into Polymer and seeing how we can apply that to the PlayStation Store itself. So the question to us is, more or less, is this a good idea? Is this something we want to do? And I want to show you real quick what it looks like. So let me boot this up real quick. Okay. And hopefully the magic works. Yes, thank you, demo gods. Okay, so right here, if you're familiar with the PS4 UI, this is what you see whenever you go into a game. And this is actually all built in Polymer on top of Dart. And even if we look at the web inspector here, we can see custom elements. So I'm available over at the booth to sort of talk more about it if you guys are interested. And of course, the company plug is, we are hiring. And we're doing very cool stuff, very bleeding edge web stuff. And also, quick little plug. The HTML5 Game Development Insights, it's actually a larger version of my WebGL talk that I did in January. And I can sign it if you get it. Don't know if it'll do much in the value, but I can sign it. All right, thank you guys.
All right, thanks, Don. Okay, so we're going to set up our next series of talks. We actually switched the order a little bit from the way it was advertised. Zeno's talk was first, but it's going to be the last one due to setup reasons. We'll have Q&A after Rob Dodson's talk. So we have 4 mini talks right now, having about 10 minutes each, 15 minutes at the very last. Some great stuff that people are doing with Polymer. And to start out, Daniel Buchner is a former Mozillian working on the spec and a lot of the great stuff. So here you go. You're mic'd up.
Yeah, can
okay.
you guys hear me? Do I need to be a little bit? Oh, yeah, just 1 second. All right, cool. So, can everyone? Nah. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Good pull. The old button. There we go. That's better. Yeah. Great. Cool. So Daniel Buchner. I was formerly at Mozilla for about 5 years. I led all of our initiatives surrounding web components, from everything from spec interactions to how we actually would use the components for things like making Firefox OS app development easier. One of my 20% projects while I was there was actually writing Xtag, the library. Weird for PM, I guess, but it's awesome. It's our version of Polymer, essentially. It does a little bit less than Polymer, no data binding, stuff like that, simply about custom elements. But I'll walk through what it does do. So interesting point, we actually use the same polyfill layer that Polymer does. So if you already were to be using Polymer and you wanted to use any web component from Xtag that was built with this library, all you would need to include is the actual library itself, which is 12K, instead of redundantly loading everything that Polymer loads. It takes care of most of the platform stuff. If you want to use a part, you can include that platform.js and include Xtag, the library, on top of that as well. And it will operate just fine in the presence of only the native web component APIs. It also enhances those APIs. It gives you an interface that's just a little bit more ergonomic. It links your custom attributes, getters, and setters together. You saw that with Polymer. So we have our own little dialect, our own way of declaring that. But we do the same thing there. Also provides some great event features, stuff I'll show you in the demo, as well as hooking up a pseudo system and a mixin API. So that if you create something like maybe iframe and image have source attributes and you want to just have the source attribute able to be applied to multiple elements, we have a mixin called SRC. And you mix that into any component, and when you change source, downloads your data, makes it available to you. So it's awesome. Let's just jump right into the demo. So you can click, if anyone's following along, I will, oops, actually it's already loaded. So here we have our code. I'm going to walk through it really quickly, just so we understand what we're doing. This is what, this is what an X-tag created element looks like. So xtag.register, this all maps to document.register element. You'll see some of the same things you're used to. Lifecycle, obviously those APIs map straight to web components. Created, that's for when the element instantiates any way that it may happen. Inserted and removed, this is when the element is removed from the DOM and inserted into the DOM. Accessors, this is how we actually link up our attributes to setters and getters. So we have a Super Mario attribute, or Super Mario getter. So if you say, this dot Super Mario, you're going to be able to access it there, or through the attribute Super dash Mario. This is also declaring it as a Boolean attribute, so it doesn't actually have a value, but Xtag handles that for you. So if you say this dot Super dash Mario equals true, it knows to put that attribute on your element without a value. We also have methods. So if you want to say, here's some methods that are going to go on my custom element, you can see we have jump and play sound, as well as an events object that does some nice wrapping. So what tap is actually an event that wraps click and touch for you, so you don't have to worry about where you're at. It just works. As well as animation end and some other things. Animation end is still prefixed in some browsers. We go ahead and take care of that for you. So all you say is, I want an animation end event on this element, and we'll make sure that the right events are handled. So let's check it out. Looks pretty familiar. People are probably used to this. So let's put Mario into the DOM.
It's me, Mario.
So when he enters the DOM, we have this part of the demo is playing here, inserted, right? So that's actually what's happening. It's going and saying, let's play this sound, which is a function that's on your custom element. Let's do some other stuff. That jump, that tap that we had in the jump function. Yeah, let's do that. So that's all there. And Mario, he's feeling a little low. He might want to become super. So you can do that. You can go back. And remember, it's a Boolean attribute, so I can say like 0, falsy. Xtag handles all this for you, converts it to truthy and falsy. So I can say 0. It's going to go back. Also, just to show you the power of getters and setters, let's say ++. Also works, right? This is just JS. It's just the platform, the DOM, stuff you're going to be used to more and more now that we're returning back to that platform. And let's say I'm done with my demo and I really want him to leave.
Hey, you're very good. See you next time.
Yeah, so this is all stuff you can do with custom elements. I would encourage you, no matter what you get into, what library around custom elements you can do, Xtag, Polymer, both, just get into them. I mean, if Xtag is the web is the Napoleon Dynamite of the platform, then surely web components are Pedro. They will, your wildest dreams are going to come true. Just to give you one quick demo, because I think we have, a couple more minutes. When they talk about non-visual tags, it's really important. Think outside the box. Not everything has to be a UI element. Here we've actually created something really cool to do element queries. So I don't know if you're familiar with media queries. Think about what if you could have media queries scoped to just a certain element, so that max width wasn't 300 pixels of the whole window. It was 300 pixels of a specific element. This is a non-visual element that we have that actually, see how they're morphing? I'm able to drag them and get different queries. They're just changing, right? This is all done through a non-visual tag. And it's handled by the shadow DOM. So all the mechanisms to allow you that functionality are baked into a non-visual tag. Explore the DOM, explore tags, no matter if they're visual or not. Thank you for your time, and questions, welcome.
Eugene and Akhilesh from Salesforce, who are using some Polymer stuff, and they're going to tell us about it. So go for it.
Thank you, Peter.
My name is Eugene, and this is Akhilesh, and together we run the mobile SDK for Salesforce. Our mission is pretty simple, to help developers create amazing mobile apps that are powered by the enterprise data. So when it comes to creating apps that you use at your job, your employee-facing applications, Salesforce is a great platform that allows you to consume your enterprise data and put that inside any mobile experience. Obviously, no mobile conversation is complete without getting into the debate between native and HTML5. You've all been there. Our position is pretty straightforward. It depends on you. You make the decision on an app-by-app basis. That's why when we talk about our mobile SDK, we layer it, and we provide you with all the essential functionality that you need to create a really solid enterprise mobile app. So we start by providing identity via the OAuth 2 standard. We have a secure offline database in case your app needs to work when it's completely disconnected. We have API wrappers and data synchronization techniques so that you can easily move objects and data back and forth between the cloud and your mobile applications. But when it comes to creating the user interface, we give you the choice, especially when it comes to creating HTML-based apps. There are a lot of great frameworks out there. All of them have their merits, and it's really up to you how you leverage them. So now, by combining your HTML with a hybrid container that we have based on PhoneGap, web developers become mobile developers. And ultimately, we believe that is the future, enabling every web developer to become a mobile developer. But I'm here to talk about our journey with Polymer. About a year ago, I was on Hacker News, like I start my daily morning, and I saw this link to this brand new framework. I was like, all right, I'll go check it out. I started watching the video with Matt from Google I/O, and I was just completely blown away. This is from last year. So in my excited state, I ran over to Akhilesh and started ranting. It's like, come on, we have to try this framework. It's amazing, it's easy, it's powerful. Look at Designer, look at Sandbox, it's so cool. And he's like, yeah, whatever. He talked to me a brand new framework every single day. But as we started this conversation, we realized that Polymer was unique. It was based on polyfills. A lot of the platform stuff was gonna go away and be baked into the browser. And that was really attractive to us. That's why we released our first version of our components based on Polymer at our annual conference. And we demoed that on stage in front of a large audience. So now I'll go into Sandbox and show you what we demonstrated. So what I have here is an instance of Sandbox that we wired up with several Salesforce components. So I'll start by dragging over the visual components for the navigation, pretty simple component to start an app, and then I'll drag over a list. And the idea here is that we want to build a product catalog for L'Oreal, a branded product catalog that they could submit to their employees and into their apps. So now that I've dragged this UI list element, you just saw a lot of data. Well, this component behind the scenes made a query to our cloud. It got all of the information with the proper security permissions and rendered this list. Pretty cool. It was that simple. And if you look at the code, all it is right now is just 3 lines. But now I want to transform this list. I'm pointing to one of our accounts tables, but I'm building a product catalog. So I'll change this to point to the product table. And just like that, everything changed. New REST API call, new data. I can then further decorate this particular table by changing some of the exposed attributes. And let's add a picture. And just like that, new data has been sent back to this visual element. No change in code, just changing the parameters. And the behaviors in this list automatically reflect that. But this app was supposed to be branded. It was supposed to be for L'Oreal. Now, Akhilesh and I are not web developers, so we decided to leverage the power of the web by going to L'Oreal's website and taking their style sheets. So we literally went to this website, copied some of the style properties, put them into our app, and now when we change the style sheets to that of L'Oreal, immediately the look and feel changes of this particular component. And it's that simple. It's the same 20 lines of code. And it looks like magic, but it's really the power of web components. All the complexity is hidden, and as a developer, this is all you have to use. So this was our first release, and we've learned a great deal about Polymer, and I'll hand it over to Akhilesh to talk about what we've built next.
Thanks so much, Eugene. So as Eugene sort of showed us the journey of how we started with simple elements, actually we have come quite a long way now. We have kind of built our own sort of gallery of our own elements here. And initially when we started, we really did not have much of an elements. We started with some basic data elements, and you can see in this category, and a lot of people sort of talked about this beforehand. Like, you need to think about elements in 2 different categories, like the ones which are just data elements or non-visual elements, which just do behind the scenes all the work for you and help other visual elements to really render properly. So we have like few data elements such as S object collection here, and so to sort of point to some tables inside Salesforce and gather some list of records from Salesforce and a detail to fetch any record detail from Salesforce. But then we started to work on some UI elements, and we had some simple list and view elements initially just to show a simple application. But then we actually started to work around with the rest of our colleagues, and we realized that our user experience team had been working on a prototyping framework with Angular, and they were building a bunch of different components on Angular, like web directives almost, to help build a design framework so that they can test new designs and do some user research with them. So we talked to them, we told them about Polymer, and they were super excited about that. And within actually few hours, they were able to turn their Angular components into Polymer components. And you can see the gallery here, and this is all hosted on a Heroku website. You can see there's a whole gallery of more than 100+ components. And you can see if I drag and drop, like, for example, this element, it's a simple anchor dark element, we call it, and exposes all the properties on the right side through our designer tool. I can go change anything here. I can put my name. And that's the beauty of Polymer. I change any attribute, it starts to show up. So all these elements, which are like whatever Angular earlier, were now Polymer with live binding capabilities. So we have like a calendar component. We have like a navigation component I can pull down here. So like if you're building an application, you want to have some navigation on the left side. We all are used to that through Facebook and other applications. A notification section. So we were building these sort of core elements for prototyping, but now when we could attach them with real data, they really can come alive and help you build a proper application, which is exactly which I kind of want to show you here. So what we can do here, for example, I can pull a simple list element, which is nothing but a static HTML, creating a simple list of UL and LIs. And what I can do is I can bind with real data coming from Salesforce. But to do that, I'll first just log into Salesforce account. It will initiate an OAuth flow and give me a session from Salesforce. And I can drag and drop this invisible element behind the scenes, which is just running a query against our account table. And I can bind these two together now just by simply selecting my collection object and using the collection property. And voila, it quickly just pulls all my account records, sales account records from Salesforce out of the box using our APIs. I can go back to my collection element, change anything here. If I want to look at, say, contact table, look at the recent items from there, I can just change some properties, and now I have a list of contacts coming from Salesforce. So let me show you some more stuff. I can put some list header in there to make it more contextual. I can go to my list header element, drag it up there on the top, give it more context, bind back to my data element, and specify the object table am I looking at, give some visual indication of the icon. So now it shows exactly which kind of information I'm looking at. But this is, again, a simple view. We always, when we look at these demos, we are always concerned about, OK, can I really build an application with this? So what I was doing was we actually built up a scaffold element, which basically nothing but a container in some ways, where you can put a navigation area. So I can drag and drop my navigation element here, which I showed you guys a little bit earlier. So I can just drag and drop it here. So I have now navigation working. I have a notifications area. I can drag and drop a notifications here. And then I have a central area, sort of main area, where I can build my application. And I can put these elements now back into this guy and bind this whole application from my navigation on the left side. So what I could do is go back to my collection object. Instead pointing it to static value, I can select it from my navigation and say selected as object property. And voila, it automatically pulls an account. So now if I tap on opportunities, it's pulling my opportunities list. And so I was able to build that quickly, and like it's kind of a cooking show where I'm showing you now the final product. So like this is the full application where I can select any object, and it's kind of the designer is a little broken here, but ultimately it gives me this simple plain HTML, which is just 20 lines of simple HTML tags which anyone can understand. And the power which comes with Polymer and Mobile SDK, which we as a product are working on, I could just copy paste the simple HTML, go back to Xcode, where I can create a new project with Mobile SDK, which works across on iOS platform. It's a simple HTML page. I can just drop this HTML here, save this guy, and run this in my iOS simulator. It will launch this application, authenticate against Salesforce using my Salesforce login flow, and I have now the same application running as a native application. I can just choose any object, look at the details right here. I have notifications, and it's a fully fledged working application that I could build in just 20 lines of code.
So yeah, so this is part of our announcement. Yeah, so here's the link. You go to bit.ly/mobilepacks. We're an open company, and so we encourage everybody to start playing with these frameworks. All of the sources available on GitHub, and we're putting Design or Host on Heroku onto this website. So if you want to build an enterprise app, get a free developer account, and start using Polymer, and together we're going to change the world.
Solve cancer.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Well, we're switching microphones here real quick. So we have another 2 exciting talks. We have Jan coming up from Component Kitchen, right? Yeah. And finally, Zeno Rocha. He's going to have a 15-minute demo. He's one of our Google developer experts in town, all the way from Brazil. So after that, we have Rob Dodson on deck. And we'll have a quick 15-minute break after that. Then we'll come back for Q&A. We'll have questions here live in the room, and then we'll have, obviously, questions from the moderator at bit.ly Polymer questions. All right, so let's do the next one.
Okay, hi, my name's Jan Miksovsky, and for the next 10 minutes, I want to give you a quick preview of a new part of the web component ecosystem. As you look at a new technology like this, I think it's helpful to look beyond the technological accomplishment and consider the question, how will this change what people can create? And I think anytime you have a space where people make things and you introduce the idea of components, you fundamentally change what people can create at a really deep level. And you're bringing a huge number of new building blocks within people's reach that they can use. It'll amplify what they can already do so that they can create something new they couldn't have made before. In the case of web components, I think it's quite interesting that because the material of web components is HTML, the change that it'll bring will not just be deep, but quite broad. Far beyond the audience of traditional developers, the benefits of web components will extend to anyone who can use HTML. And there are a lot of those people. So think about all the people you know who are designers, marketers, writers, small business owners, individuals that have at any point touched HTML. There are a lot of those people. The fact, they don't even always aren't using traditional dev tools. Many times they're editing a site in the context of a hosted environment, so Squarespace or Drupal or WordPress. And as long as the site gives them the ability to edit bits of HTML inside that hosted environment, they can create things. And because web components are just HTML, it means the technology has the potential to amplify what those HTML-level authors can create. All that's necessary is that the ecosystem expand to include them. And so a few months ago, a friend of mine and I founded Component Kitchen because we wanted to help bring that about. We think that this is going to be fascinating, transformative technology, and we wanted to help bring web components to a mainstream audience so that we can help them understand what the technology can do for them, and then help them find great web components that'll let them make their own work shine. So tonight, we wanted to give the first public preview of our service. So I'm going to start by showing the basic thing that we're starting with, which is a catalog of components. There will be other catalogs, other registries. Our take that we're going after is we'd like to make this available to a mainstream audience. So that starts by taking the ideas that have been proven out in well-designed app stores and online stores and applying them to this domain. So for starters, we want to make it as visually engaging as possible so people can understand what they're looking at. And we want to bring in the now traditional community aspects of stores like ratings and reviews and recommendations, along with tools like tutorials to help them understand what this can do for them and also help them find the components they're looking for, things that will solve the problems that they have. We're going to walk through just 3 quick examples. So I'll start with a really basic component. This one happens to put an interactive map onto your website with a little bit of HTML. And the author of this component didn't have to do anything special. They make the source available on GitHub, and they register it with a service called Bower. That makes it discoverable by our site. We can go to that source repository and extract data about this component, metadata on the left, things like a README on the right. So these are just basic details. And by pulling information on all the components that have been made available and pulling that together in a site, we can advocate for the consumer of these components, because we can allow them to quickly compare components and assess the value of those so that they can quickly find the particular one that's going to solve their need. Now, a README file tends to be something that's written for a more technical audience, people who want to understand the construction of something. But here, this audience is primarily interested in using components, and they want to use them at the level of HTML markup. That's what they understand. So let's look at another example. This is actually a component that Eric showed earlier. This is the geolocation component he mentioned. And what he's done in the source for his component is he's annotated the source code with comments that follow a particular convention. And what that lets him do is then those comments describe what attributes that component supports in language that's meaningful to a wider audience. So for example, someone coming to this can see, okay, I get it. There are going to be new custom attributes on this component that other components don't have. These are unique to this geolocation one, including things like the latitude and longitude. So they can make sense at their level for what these components can do. For the third and last example, I'd like you to consider, imagine for a moment that you're not someone who's intimately familiar with web development, but instead someone who works at the level of HTML. Maybe you work in a small team or an organization that doesn't have dedicated development staff. And occasionally you have, as part of your job, maybe it's not your primary responsibility, but occasionally you need to go and edit some HTML. And let's imagine that you're adding a form to your website and you want to collect some data from the user. And in this particular example, let's imagine that you're going to have a text area into which the user can, your end users can type in some text. Maybe when you create this form, you'll be surprised or disappointed by the fact that the standard HTML text area doesn't grow in size as your users type into it. This is surprising or disappointing to you because when you go to a polished, large-scale site like Facebook and you type in a status area, you see that box automatically growing as you're typing. You thought that that was part of the web. Silly you. So you'd like to have, you wish that you could give your own users, the users of your site, that same ability. So until now, that was probably beyond your abilities as an HTML author. In order to solve that problem, you need to know JavaScript, and you need to know how the DOM works at a certain level, what events you need to wire up. It's fairly complex. The good news with web components is that somebody can wrap up a solution like that and create a thing you can use. It's not a recipe like you might find on a site like Stack Overflow where you have to follow a bunch of instructions. It's a thing you can search for and then get a result for. So this is an example of a component that might fit the bill. This particular page is one we're using as a proving ground to test out some ideas that we'd like to enable for all components in this catalog. There's 2 interesting things going on here. The first is the centerpiece of the page is a live demonstration of that component, because that's really going to, that's what's going to sell you on using it. So here, as an HTML author exploring the site, I can see, yep, this is the kind of thing that I want. I want that. And then right below it, you can see the fact that you can see the HTML fragment that created that demo. They're live, so you can edit one and see how it affects the demonstration. And as an HTML author, this is quite reassuring to you. There's nothing, aside from the fact that there's this new tag you've never seen before, The syntax is familiar to you. The idea that you can set attributes on it and type stuff inside the tags, that's all stuff you get. So all you need to focus your attention on are what are the attributes here that are unique to the component. Again, we can extract information about those attributes from the source code of the component and create here on the right a little editor that lets you experiment with them. So perhaps in this example, you want your users to feel comfortable typing in a bit of text, and so you decide that what you want to do is give them a larger initial size to this box. It's always going to be at least 5 lines tall. As you edit this custom attribute, you see it updates the attribute in the markup example down below, so you get, okay, this is how I'm going to accomplish this in HTML, and it updates the demo so you can see how that's going to affect the final presentation, the experience your users will have. Okay, so now you've found the auto-sizing text area of your dreams, and you want to add this to your site. So today, if you're not a web developer, the tools of web development, things like GitHub or NPM, these tools that web developers get, those are unfamiliar to you. So telling you to go use those tools is not going to be very meaningful. So now we get to the second part that we'd like to enable, and that's to take advantage of a core web component feature, which is HTML imports. We can host on the Component Kitchen site a copy of a component that you can reference in HTML from any site. So as the author trying this out, you can click Copy to Clipboard, and then go into whatever tool you use to edit HTML. It can be anything. I'm going to just use the simplest one I can find. So there's HTML on the left, and then the output on the right. And you come to an editor like this, and then paste in the code. And here we see a live version of that running on your site. So on the left, what's happened is we've got the little bit of HTML which you customized on the site to get it to look the way you wanted. Above that, it's also grabbed a script tag that loads that platform.js library the Polymer guys talked about, as well as an HTML import that references a hosted version of this component hosted at our site so that you can use this anywhere. All you needed was HTML. So I want you to think for a moment about if you're someone who deals with HTML in a site like Squarespace or WordPress, things like that, think about how transformative this will be for what you can create. Here's something you wanted to be able to do that until yesterday was something that was too difficult. And now it's just a matter of cut and paste. So you can see that this skill you have, just the ability to feel comfortable looking at HTML and editing it, that skill you have has suddenly become amplified to be so much more valuable and powerful. It's this existing skill you have, and suddenly now you're able to create new stuff. If you think about whatever it is you do in your day job, your organization, your company, there may be some service or some interaction that you would like other people to offer on their site. I think a web component will be a great way for you to deliver that. And at Component Kitchen, what we want to do is help you find that audience, help people find your component, understand what it can do, and then use it. So that's almost all the time I've got. I did want to point out, I'd encourage you to check out the site. It's component.kitchen. Yay for new top-level domains. And there's a link to an RSS feed we offer. We've already found this pretty useful. It tracks all new components that are published. So if you want to just see what people are doing, this is a good way to find out about it. And then finally, I'd encourage you, if you've got your phone handy or your laptop, go to Twitter, follow us on at ComponentK. We'd love to hear what you think. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. All right, thanks. Okay, next up we have Zeno Rocha for the final demo, and then on deck is Rob Dodson for the 30-minute talk. Okay, we're switching gears here a moment. We have a laptop laying around. Here, take this. Okay. All right, so once again, bit.ly Polymer live stream is the URL where you can tell your friends to tune in. We've got a couple hundred people on the live stream, on and off, so that's great. Thanks for joining us. And are you, yeah, there you go, okay. Again, after Rob's talk, we'll have a quick 15-minute break. If you want to hang on to those tickets, we have the Q&A, and then we'll have the raffle with some, as I mentioned before, some great prizes. Books, a Chromebook, some tablets, a great headset over there, so definitely check that out. Also, at the break, we'll still have the wine bar open. Definitely check out some of their wines. Okay, you got it?
Yep.
All right, good.
Okay, guys, good evening. So today we're going to talk about web components and all this chance to create the future. My name is Zeno Rocha. Here's my Twitter. If you want to send any feedback, this talk sucks, this talk is awesome. If you have any question, just let me know. Just ping me on Twitter. I'll be more than happy to answer you, okay? And I'm from Brazil, which is kind of crazy because I flew like 16 hours to be here for a 15-minute talk. Yeah. And I'm extremely happy to be here with you today. It's just amazing to see all those people together to talk about web components and discuss this new thing. And today is basically about those three things. It's about how to create your element. It's about how to learn how to create your element. And it's about sharing your element and all your work to the world. When I first started learning web components was in the beginning of last year. And I was learning web components, was pretty amazed by it. But then I saw those two talks from Alex and Matthew, and then this other talk from Eric on Google I/O last year. And I was completely, amazed. I was like, oh my God, this thing is crazy. Web component is crazy. It's going to change everything. I really need to study this thing. I was just like that guy, exactly same feeling. And I started learning web components, creating my new things. But at that time, there was no starter kit. So there were a couple of tutorials to teach you how to create your element, but there was no starter kit. Some boilerplate code, something like that I could just jump in and start creating my elements. So since there was no starter kit, I decided to create our own. So if you want to create your element using Polymer nowadays, you can just go to github.com/webcomponents/Polymer boilerplate, and we have this boilerplate for you. So which is great. There's a lot of stuff that you can use it. If you want to use Xtag, no problem. We got you covered. It's basically the same web component, but using Xtag. But if you don't want to use any of those solutions, you want to see how web components will interact just using plain JavaScript, just vanilla JavaScript, we got another one, which is element boilerplate. So those three repos, they try to solve the exact same problem using those different solutions. And you can just go ahead, see it, and decide which one is better for your problem. And what's included in those boilerplates? So we encourage a set of best practice, We really want you to share elements on Bower, for example. We want you to have some grunt tests that you can put your live demos online. We want some lifecycle callbacks, which are pretty useful when you're developing. So these boilerplates contain those kinds of things. But there's still, that's not totally awesome, because you go to GitHub, you click on fork, and then you need to make some edits. You need to do some find and replacing comments to change and create your element. So we decided, hey, we can automate this thing. And we created a Yeoman generator that can automate even more live for you. So it's on web components/generator element, and let me show you how it works. So let me create a folder here. It's going to be called my element. Nice. And then you install it, and after you install it from npm, all you need to do is type yo element, and we show you this little awesome welcome thing that I took like 3 hours to create. And then you have this first question. What do you want to use to create your element? You want Polymer, you want Xtag, or you just want vanilla.js? I just want Polymer. My element will be called my element. Yeah, I want lifecycle callbacks, and in 3 seconds, you have your element created. Let's check. What is this? So it's just the element itself. You know, it's important Polymer that have the Polymer definition here and the lifecycle callbacks. So this is pretty great. But you know, this is just the element. I want to create a repository on GitHub that I can share with everybody and contains my element. Okay, if you type yo element repo, then you got this awesome welcome message. And you know, almost the same questions, but what's the GitHub repository you want? What's your GitHub username? What's the name of your element? What's the description? Lifecycle callbacks, yes, I want some useful grunt tasks. And then it generates all the files for you. It runs npm install and bower install, and then grabs all the dependencies, and boom. If I open this in Sublime, you have the application, loading platform, loading your element, importing your element, and now you have your element with Bower and the node modules already installed for you. So this is pretty great, right? So it's so easy to create your element nowadays. So, okay, we got creating elements covered. But so when we put together this boilerplate, lots of people started to create their elements. And they end up doing crazy things, you know? So one of the things that people have been doing, so this library is Tracking.js. It's a library created by Eduardo Lundgren. He works with me at Liferay. And it's a library to do color recognition and face detection. And we thought, hey, what if we wrap this library into an element? Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, probably. So I got this PlayStation controls here. We have some colors, magenta, cyan, and other ones. And I hope this works, because this really depends on the light. So let's see how it goes. No, you can turn it on, no problem on this one. So first, let's do some changes in the code, right? Let me explain to you what is this about. So I have a video, and I'm extending this video to create a video tracking. So my element is video tracking, I'm extending it and creating a new thing. And I added 2 new attributes. The first one is what? What do you want to track? I want to track a color. And what's the color? Well, the color is cyan. Can you turn on the lights, please? So this is cyan. I need to be away from it. Oh, no. Woo. Come on, that's awesome, guys. All you need to do is this, you know? But yeah, I don't want to track colors. I just want to track a human, but what part of a human do you want? I want the frontal face. The frontal face seems nice. If I go here and woohoo! Ah! No. Why zoom? So it's here, it's working. So, yeah. Imagine how hard it will be to create an element that makes face detection, right? Peter, can you turn on the lights? Yeah. Because this next one really depends on the light. So another element that we created is the SFHTML5 element, which is pretty useful. You're going to see how useful it is. So what we're doing here is just importing platform.js. We're importing the element, some CSS for the demos. And if I open this on Firefox, it's just this, OK? It's just this CSS thing going on. But if I turn off the lights, Okay, so what this element is doing under the hood is using the device light API, which is just landed on Firefox. And we detect how much light has in this room, and then we do something. In this case, it's just doing some CSS changes. So yeah, it's so awesome, you know, you have all those things, and people started to create amazing things, you know. Today we saw a bunch of crazy things that people are doing with web components. But we needed to show to people that those elements exist. So we needed a place to show elements. We needed a place for people to, hey, take a look, this is what I created using web components. So we got some friends together last year, and we created this thing called customelements.io. I don't know if any of you have ever heard about it. Does someone ever heard about it? Oh, that's awesome. So we created this back on August, and it's been crazy. There's almost 200 elements in this gallery, more than 100,000 page views on the website from all over the world. It's just one page on the website, so yeah, it's nice. And now people are able to share their elements, and we have a place to put those things. Because before that, we had like, where should I place my element? Should I put it on NPM, Bower, or any other package manager? And okay, Bower seems like the best decision to put your elements, right? It's a front-end package manager. But how can you find web components inside of Bower? You know, there's this huge thing, ecosystem with lots of front-end packages, but you can't filter which ones are really web components. So we made this thing to put elements into the world. And how do you add your element there? It's pretty easy. On your bower.json file, all you need to do is include the web components keyword, this one here. When you include this keyword, you register your package, and then it will appear on customelements.io. So it's really, really easy. So we know how to create elements. We know how to share them. But how do you learn about web components? If there was no SFHTML5 for you, how would you learn? You know, what's the main reference to learn web components? Should I go to Polymer website, or should I go to Xtag website? Should I go to some blog posts that I find on the web? Should I go to HTML5 Rocks? What's the main reference to learn web components? So again, we got some friends together. Friends like Adios Money, which really helped in this project. And lots of awesome guys that talked here today and are doing amazing stuff using web components. And we are really excited to present this to you. We have been working on this project since last year, and we decided to choose this conference to show to you guys and present for the first time. And this project is called webcomponents.org. It's not available on webcomponents.org now, so if you want to eat, you need to tweet webcomponents.github.io. You can blame the guys who work from Google that didn't set up the domain yet. But this place is what we want to give to the community to learn and to share things about web components and gather best practice. All articles about web components, the specs of web components, the browser support, everything, presentations, we want to put content there that people can learn what web components is. And we want to put the best content there. So what's web components all about? It's about gathering best practice, discussing API implementations, like how should I build a carousel? Everybody will start to building their own carousel elements, right? So what's the best way to build it? We want to introduce useful stuff like the Yeoman generator or the boilerplates. And we want to highlight articles and talks like those we have seen today. So now that's it. We got covered everything. And before leaving you, I just want to say that the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's the exact same thing that we are doing right now. We are not just waiting for someone to create the future for us. We are here to define how web components will be. We are here to define the future of the web platform. And that's it. Thank you. one quick thing. Oh, my mic is off. So the slides are here, bit.ly/wc slides, and I got stickers. What? you can find me after Rob's talk, and I can give you some stickers. Okay? See you guys.
All right. Thank you, Zeno. Okay. So the final talk of the evening, we have Rob Dodson, developer advocate at Google, working primarily on Polymer. We also really like your feedback. So many times we have an event and we only get a few comments. So we really like to hear from you, preferably in the meetup comments. I mean, you can send us an email as well. But in the meetup comments, give us what you think. Give us the topics you're interested in and feedback on the event. That only helps us make it better.
Sure.
So bit.ly Polymer live stream is the live stream URL. We still have a little bit of time to create any of the fun Polymer toy pieces and tweet those with the SFHTML5 and Polymer hashtags. There's been some pretty good ones. All right, Rob, are you ready?
Yeah. Okay. Can you guys hear me
Thanks,
good?
Rob.
Yeah. Good. Good. By the way, before I start, can we all just put our hands together for Mr. Peter Lovers, because this is a big ol' event with like a lot of really great stickers. So so thank you, Peter, for putting this together. This is awesome. All right, so yeah, this is me, Rob Dodson, developer advocate here at the Googles. Thank you. Awesome. As Peter mentioned, I work on the Polymer project. My single goal in life right now is to get web components into all of your hot little hands. As we were talking about what sort of sessions we wanted to do at this conference, I was saying I really want to do something about actually building elements. So I want you guys to see what it's like to actually write the code and work with these things. What I found personally is that when I'm hacking on an idea over the weekend, or I just wake up late at night and I got this thing in my head and I'm like, I gotta get this out of my head. I gotta see this on screen. I found that when I'm working with elements, it just makes me crazy super productive, because there's a lot of really cool APIs and services out there that I want to play around with, but it's just a bunch of work to get them all set up in my app and plumb it all together and glue all the bits together. And when I'm working with elements, I can actually take an element that someone else has created, which just wraps their API nice and neat for me into a little tag, and then I can just bolt those pieces together, kind of like Lego building blocks, right? I can put them together, I can get my idea out, I can sort of deconstruct them even and rearrange the elements and repurpose them and use them in a totally different way. So that's what I want to talk about tonight is how do we actually use all these different elements. I'm going to start my clock here so I don't run too over time. What we're going to do is we're going to build a couple apps. You guys are actually going to watch me do this live, so fingers crossed this goes well. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a Street View tour. So we're going to build this application that connects to a backend. It's going to pull some data off that backend and load it into Google Maps. It's going to show us a description of the location that we're looking at in the map. And lastly, it's going to let us explore the space using a Street View element. So that's going to be mashup number 1. Mashup number 2 is going to be a map voice search element. So it's going to repurpose the Google Map element that we're going to use in the first mashup. We're going to use it again in the second one. We're going to be able to search it using either keyboard or our voice. And we're going to get it running on the phone using this amazing camera contraption thing. So that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to hop into code. If you guys can't see anything, or if you see me making grave mistakes while I type out code, please shout it out. How do you does anybody know how to make the sidebar bigger in Sublime? I don't actually know. It's okay, you don't really have to see it. But okay, so what I got here is just a folder called development. It's a little hard to see over there. And I've got an element inside of here just called map tour. And you can't see the folder, but that's cool. And typically what I do when I'm starting any application is I create a little Bower.json file. And inside of here, I find all the things that I want to install into my app. Can the people in the back of the room see this, sort of, kind of? Yeah, all right, I see some, that's good. Okay. So I got a Bower.json file here, and inside, these are the dependencies that my app is going to use. So we got Polymer, we got this thing called xtag imports, which we're going to talk about a little bit, Google Maps, Polymer UI card, a bunch of really cool different things that we're going to bolt together. And I'm going to cover each of these individually as we get to them, so we don't have to worry about too much about what's going on in there. Instead, we're just going to hop into Map Tour on Bower install. And that's going to go out, it's going to crawl the interwebs, and it's going to grab all these different things and drop them into my application so I can start using them. OK, whoosh, they're all in there. That's cool. All right, so I got all the stuffs that I need to use. I'm going to open this demo HTML file. You guys can see that. And first thing I got to do is I got to make sure to load the platform. That platform layer is very important. That's how we jump our browser into the future, so web components work. Regardless of the browser that I'm in, once I drop that one line of JavaScript in there, I can start using web components, registering my own elements, using Shadow DOM. And the first thing that I'm going to do, now that I have these superpowers, is I'm going to import the rest of Polymer. I'm going to do this using an HTML import. So I'm using a little link tag here. So I'm going to grab polymer/polymer.htmls. Now, anytime I start any Polymer project, I typically just stub out really quickly, like a simple Polymer element that just says, hello world. And I'm just going to clean this guy up a bit. So the thing that we're building is a little map tour. And inside, I've got a little template tag here. Whatever I put into that template tag, when the browser sees my new element on the page, it's just going to grab the stuff out of the template tag and render it for me. So to verify that Polymer is set up correctly, I'll just do hello world, right? This is really simple. This is the most basic Polymer element that you can write. And hop over to my browser. Go to localhost 8080. And OK, so I do this all the time. I didn't actually use the thing after I defined it. OK, lesson number 1, do that. Use the tag. OK? There we go. All right. Thank you for small miracles, please. Thank you. All right. So we got our map tour showing up. It says hello world. That's kind of like not the most fun thing ever. If I go back to the requirements for my really cool mashup, number 1 is I got to connect to a backend service. So show of hands, how many of you have ever seen or used Firebase before? Some of you? OK. So for those of you who haven't, Firebase is this really cool service. You can basically upload some JSON to it, and it'll create a little endpoint for you. And then you can just later on be like, hey, give me that JSON back. Just request it, and it'll send it right back to you. So I've got a little collection here called views. There's only one item inside of it, but it's got a little bit of data. It's got some latitude and longitude for a location on a map that I want to load into the Googly Maps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this data off Firebase. I'm going to get it into my app. And naturally, I know all of your brains right now, they're going to $.ajax. You're like, OK, I know how he's going to do this. But that's not how we're going to do this. We're actually going to use an element that the team created called core Ajax. So I think you guys saw a little bit of this earlier. So core Ajax is a custom element that allows you to do XML HTTP requests completely declaratively, just using an HTML tag. So we're going to, actually, before we do that, we're going to grab this whole map tour thing that we've been building, and we're going to turn it into its own file, maptour.html. And I apologize if this is a little hard to see. You can ignore this part. Maptour.html. And grab Polymer. This is just really like the standard way that you want to build your custom elements. You want to build them in their own little HTML file that you import into your demo. So that way when someone Bower installs your element later, they can just link to it. So we're going to grab maptour.html. OK. So what that's doing is that's just grabbing this little file over here that I created. This is where we're actually going to build our element. So I'm going to verify things look good still. Still says hello world. Rad. OK. Now I mentioned we're going to use core Ajax. So let's just import that guy. Core Ajax. And the way you configure core Ajax is pretty straightforward. First, you can give it an auto attribute. And that's going to say, hey, anytime this tag, like the parser hits it or something, just go out and make the HTTP request on my behalf. I don't want to have to like call a method to kick you off. I just want you to like do your thing. And as for where to go, I'm going to grab this URL from Firebase, drop that guy in there, and we're going to ask for the views JSON object. And when that data comes back from Firebase, I'm going to create a little scope variable for it called views. What? Oh, thank you. You guys are good. Thank you. Whoever said that gets all the stickers. OK. Did I do it again? Wait, what? Response. Response A. OK. All right, response. OK, so data comes back. I create a scope variable called views. And now that's going to be available throughout my element. Anybody can now bind to this views object and play around with this collection that just came back from Firebase. So I'm going to just write h1 here, and I want views0.name, and we'll also get like views0.latitude. So this is just the data that I have in Firebase there. I refresh the page, and I see Heron Island, -23. And I go back to Firebase, and that is the name of the location on the map that we're trying to like get into our application. OK, cool. So I didn't write any JavaScript, by the way, and we just completed the first line of our mashup here. We connected to a backend service, we got data, and we loaded it into our app. And the next thing I need to do is I need to get it into the Google Maps. And you guys have seen the Google Maps element a fair bit. If you actually want to play around with it, it's up on GitHub at polymerlabs/Google-map. Please go grab it and mess around with it. It's a lot of fun. And in my editor, I'm just going to import Google Map, googlemap.html. Remember, all these things just came from that Bower JSON file that I installed from earlier. So that's where they're magically appearing from. So instead of grabbing name and latitude and just dropping that into H1s, I'm going to drop it into Google Map element. So I want its latitude. This guy, it's latitude. But thank you for if you guys were trying to save me from myself. And we want its longitude. And I just know later on I'm going to need to expose the map property for Street View. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so I don't forget. And we got to write just a tiny bit of JavaScript here, or sorry, CSS here, to style the Google Map element so it looks nice on our page. So we're going to set its display to block and its height to 100%. OK. So we got data coming from Firebase into Core Ajax, and then from Core Ajax, it goes into our Google Map. Swap back over to our page, refresh. And whoa, there we go. OK, so we got a Google Map here. It's a little hard to see, like, where is Heron Island? I'm not quite sure. So I'm just going to add one more attribute, show center marker. And boom. OK, so these attributes and everything that I'm adding, these are just part of the Google Maps API. But the element has given me a nice, like, declarative way of playing around with them. I don't have to get in there and write a configuration object and specifically pass it into the constructor of Google Maps, right? I can just say, hey, show me the center marker. And I get it. OK, so that's really exciting. I like that. So we got this thing appearing in Google Maps. Now I want to do a little like crazy interop thing here. I want to make Polymer work with X tags. I want to actually like use both of them in the same project. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our Google Map, and I'm going to kind of create like a Grand Theft Auto style heads-up display. Like I want to take the map and like put it into a little card down in the bottom corner of my site. And then I'm going to drop in a Street View element after that. So that way, when you're like in the Street View element, you got the map kind of showing you where you're at. So to do that, we've got another element here from the Polymer team called Polymer UI card that we're going to actually put our map inside of. I don't know if that comes through super clear on the projector, but Polymer UI card's really nice. You get these cool, swipeable Google Now cards. So I am going to just import Polymer UI card. And I should mention, after I get this card in, I'm going to put it inside of an X tag. So we're going to drop it inside of this X tag called Flipbox. So Flipbox, as Daniel probably mentioned earlier, shows you how to like toggle these things back and forth. You get these cool 3D flipping effects. So I'm going to put 2 cards inside of here. The first one's going to show my map, and the other one's going to show an actual like description of Heron Island, this place, this mythical place that we're trying to visualize. So we got our Polymer UI card, and I'm just going to say Polymer UI card. And the nice thing is I can just like scoot the map like up in there, you know? And I am going to have to write a tiny bit of CSS to position this thing. And this is the last CSS I'm going to write. Let's see. So we want our card to have like a width and height of like 275. And we'll give it some padding. And position absolute. And we're going to put it in the bottom left-hand corner of our site. All right. So we got our card here. Semicolon. Oh, man. Thanks, guys. Okay, so we got our card here. And believe everything's right. Okay, now I know the projector's messing me up right now. The projector's trying to wreck my game. So I'm going to scoot this guy in. Or maybe he's not. Oh, you can see that. Okay, cool. He can see that. It was cut off during the earlier demo. There you go. See that guy? Okay, so we... What's up? Oh, okay. Oh, shit. Well, the sign's really wrecking my game. All right, for you sign people, here, look, it's over there, okay? Or look at that projector. Okay, so we got our card down there, but I mentioned Flipbox, right? I want to flip this thing back and forth. I wanted to do some cool stuff. So we've been working, myself and some of the guys on Xtags have been working on this project called Xtag Imports, which actually lets you import Xtags using HTML imports. Sorry, this is the better URL. That's my fork. That's the URL you want, x-tag/xtag imports. So I'm going to import Flipbox. So xtag imports, xtag flipbox.html. Drop that guy. Basically like the same thing that we did to the card itself, or the Google map. When we move the Google map into the Polymer UI card, now we're going to take that whole thing and move it into a Flipbox. And yeah, the name x-flipbox is different from the import, but that's by design. Okay, so now we just like scooted this card up into the Flipbox, right? That's kind of cool. And I'm going to write another Polymer UI card for the back face. And we're just going to give this a div description. I'm going to use another binding, and we're still using this data object coming from Firebase. So I got my view, and what I want is its description. And maybe we'll drop the name in there as well so people know what the heck they're looking at. That looks good. It's looking good. Should I be binding to the description on the map? Oh, yeah, that's cool. No, yes, that's on purpose, yes. So when we see this guy, what we're going to get is, oh, we need to write a little bit of JavaScript to tell Flipbox that homie's got a flip. So we're going to give it a little bit of an ID, and we're going to say on tap, anytime anybody clicks on you, I want you to do your flip thing. Down here in my prototype, do flip. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually just referring to Flipbox. I'm referring to its ID with this $.$.Flipbox, and I'm telling it to toggle. And wait, time out. We also need a little CSS. There we go. Whew. All right. So we got our little card down there with the name now showing. And when I click on it, I get this rad flipping effect. So you can see, oh, cool, okay. So now I know what the heck Heron Island is, right? Oh, sorry, I didn't want it to remain on the back face. I wanted it to be hidden on the back face. Yeah. But yes, you're right. If I wanted it to remain in both places, I would put the H3 on both cards. Yeah. Okay, so this is like the world's most boring application that I've ever built, right? It could do so much more. So the last thing that I want to do is I'm going to go over to customelements.io. And by the way, I recommend if you guys haven't been there yet, please go check it out and play around with it, because there's so much cool stuff on there. Like every time I go to customelements.io, I'm like, I want to build an app, and I just start finding cool things on here, and I'm like, yeah, I want that one too, and that one, and that one, and I just start bolting them together, kind of like a mad scientist. So there's an element here that I've got called Google Map Street View Panorama. I'm sorry that it has the longest name ever. I'm probably going to rename it. So what it does is it bundles up the API for working with Street View. So I'm just going to import this guy. Google Map Street View Panorama. We're definitely going to copy and paste that. .html. Google Map Street View. Okay. And up here, drop it into a tag. Wrap that guy. And we got to make sure to bind to the map property that we exposed earlier from our Google Map down here, so that we know that Maps has loaded. And if we go back and we look at Firebase, there's all these things in here like heading and Pano ID and pitch, things that we need to use inside of this element. So we're going to bind Pano ID equal to view0.panoid. And we'll do our heading. Whoa, that was crazy. We'll do zoom. I mean, it was helpful, but crazy. We'll do pitch. Okay, heading, zoom, pitch, Pano ID, map. Let's cross our fingers. Let's see what we get. Oh, shit. Oh, my God, we got a sea turtle. Okay. Yay. There was much rejoicing. Okay, so yeah, Heron Island, Coral Cay, and the Great Barrier Reef, featuring sea turtles, right? So this is actual Street View. You can play around with this guy. You can see that he's actually got this other sea turtle who's stealthing on him. I'm about to steal his stuff. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do just wiring together elements. I wrote, this is our only line of JavaScript, really, right? And the rest of this, yeah, thank you. And the rest of this was just elements. We're just grabbing things, wiring them together, building blocks, right? Okay, so thus concludes the hair-raising text editor live coding portion of the talk. Now we move on to the designer. So we're going to build this map voice search thing using the designer tool that you guys have seen earlier. So let's see, localhost 9000. All right, so this is the current gen version of our designer tool. Let me make sure you guys can see that real good. All right. There you go. Can you guys see that good on both projectors? Okay, rad. All right. Current generation version of the designer tool. I'm going to drop a scaffolding element onto the page. I'm going to click this little button to make it fit. So this scaffold element gives me really the bare bones of a responsive website. I get a sidebar that'll collapse for me if the viewport is too small. I get a content area where I can just drop things into. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the Google Map. My old friend Google Map, he's back. Again, this is the same Google Map element that we were just working with. If you look down here in the bottom left-hand corner, right, this guy right here, Google Map, same dude, right? But this time we just dropped him onto the page. And what I want to happen is when I click these buttons over here, I want to change between roadmap view and satellite view, okay? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to grab these guys, we're going to change their labels, roadmap and satellite. And maybe we'll give them really cool markers too. Those markers suck. There we go. All right, they look way nicer now. Okay, so I've got two buttons here, and I got a map, but they're not talking yet. I want them to actually talk to each other. So if you hop over to the code view for the editor, I'll try and blow that up for you guys so you can see a little bit better. So you got these core items here. This is what I've been dropping onto my canvas, right? Roadmap, satellite, etc. And if you look, we're actually inside of a Polymer element. The only thing that we're doing inside of this designer tool is we're just building one big Polymer element. And so that means we can use all of the features in Polymer in this code editor. So I can say, hey, on tap, I want you to show the road, or sorry, yeah, show the road. On tap, show the satellite. And then down here in the prototype for our element, we're just going to say show road is a function. Show sat is a function. And we're just going to tell the Google Map element to set its map type equal to road map. And click on satellite, set to satellite. A caller function? That's what on tap. Do I need a caller function? No, I don't. This guy right here, it's a declarative event binding. So whatever I pass it right here, it's just going to like trigger that on my prototype anytime someone actually touches the element. Okay. So if we save it, we can actually click this guy and preview it over here. And then when I click satellite, I get satellite view, I get the roadmap view. I resize the page, I get responsiveness for free. It's pretty rad, right? And if I take this phone over here, so I got a phone, and what I'm going to try to do is preview this over here. So I'm just going to take this URL, open the DevTools, and say inspect device. We're using port forwarding to forward the port that this is running on to our device. There we go. Man, it's like taking a nap. All right, let's see. Oh, we so don't have port forwarding. That's cool. We can fix that. Oh, was there? Wait. Yeah. Oh, shit, dude. Okay, thank you. Thanks, man. Yes. Oh, my God. I love all of you. All right. Yes. Sweet. Okay, this thing. Whoa, hey, check it out. So here's my app running on the phone. And all I did was open up the tab that I was working with over here on the device and click on it. Switch to satellite mode. Click back. Roadmap. Cool, right? Okay, so now I'm using this designer tool and I'm actually like constructing a mobile app. I'm not even writing any code to do this. So the last trick that I want to do is I want to add voice search to this whole process. So I'm going to go back to our designer. Enhance, there we go. And I want to be able to search for a location, so I'm going to drop a field up in here. And we're going to just drop that up in the top left corner. Because this is just an HTML element, I can actually change its style, so I can set its background color to white. Now you can actually see it up there. And I need to bind that field to the map. And I'm going to use another element to do this for me, to do kind of the heavy lifting. So I've got an element here called Google Maps Search. It's a non-visual element, so I drop it on the screen. You're not going to see anything update, but over here in the Properties Inspector, I've got these two new properties, Map and Query. So I can bind those to the Google Map element, bind to its map property, bind the query to the core input, which is the input field, up here. And then my Google Map element, I'm going to tell it to bind to the search element that I just dropped on the page. So latitude is Google Maps search. Result.latitude. Longitude, Google Maps search. Result.longitude. And zoom is 18. Okay? And we're going to also turn off the UI for Google Maps because it's like getting in my way. So if I switch to satellite mode now, let me save it, preview it. So hop into satellite mode, and let's check out the Eiffel Tower. Whoosh. All right, so now we're in Paris. We're looking at the Eiffel Tower, which is beautiful. But we're building a mobile app, right? And typing with these gigantic hands is impossible on a phone. So I would prefer if I could use voice search to do this. So we're going to go back to our editor. We're going to grab this little speech mic element and just drop it into our input field. And we're going to go to our core input and bind its value to that speech mic. SpeechMic.transcript. So now, anytime I talk into the microphone, it goes to the core input. That gets piped to Google Maps search, which gets piped to the Google Map itself. Okay? You guys following that chain? Right? So I'm going to save this, preview it. Should be able to look at this on the phone. What? Oh, fuck. Don't steal my phone, okay? You will all be confiscated as you leave this event. Oh my god, that's super funny. All right. Well, anyway, guys, the microphone's here, so hold, okay, so please, the microphone. Now stop laughing, because you got to be really quiet, because we're going to try to do this. Okay. Roman Colosseum. Yeah, what's up? Ugh. Okay. Holy shit. Peter, I'm sorry I swore so much on stage. Okay, so I wanted you guys to get a feel for what it is to actually work with these elements, right? I don't want to do a high-level talk. I want you guys to actually see these things, because this is going to be the future. This is going to be the improved developer ergonomics that I think a lot of us are after. So please go check out the Polymer website. Hit us up on @Polymer on the Twitters. You can find all my information. Oh, wait. You can find all my information on this slide right here. Thank you guys so much for coming out, and definitely stick around for the QA.
All right, that was great. Minds are blown.
Oh my God.
All right, so we're going to have a 15-minute break. There's still some wine left at the wine bar. Come back in 15 minutes. The Q&A moderator at bit.ly, Polymer questions, and live questions, of course.
I hope not.
15 minutes, we have to be back.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, why don't we line up and have a seat? Let's everyone sit down. Rob, can we get going? All right, we got questions and answers by the Polymer experts. We'll get that out.
So your role was going to be to make sure somebody had a mic?
All right. Jan, are you coming up here as an expert? All right. So I think we're going to get started. What I'd like to do is take a few questions from the live stream audience, from the moderator. And if you have a live question, we invite those. You can hop over to the mic that's centered in the room here, and you can queue up there for your live questions. All right, so we have a few mics here. We're ready. Let's start with, so if you have a live question, that's the mic. The floor is open. So the first question from Eric in Portland. How does Polymer stack up with other web component implementations in terms of performance? Perf matters.
So I can take that. My name is Alex Komorowski. I didn't present tonight. I'm a product manager working on Polymer and Blink. So one of the important things to think about with Polymer is this is a framework for the future. This is a library for the future. And so as browsers ship these web component standards natively, it will just automatically speed up. So Chrome has many of the pieces shipping, and we hope that HTML imports will make it into M36. And so our goal in browsers that don't yet support the web components emerging standards is to have performance that's comparable to what you would get in frameworks today, but that once browsers ship these native implementations, it just gets much, much faster.
Yeah, so performance is a really complicated topic. So it's actually a little bit difficult, and web components is a very broad term. So the question's a little bit difficult to answer. But Polymer actually isn't an implementation of web components. So web components is a native feature that Polymer is using. And that native feature, because it's in the browser, should long-term be a better bet.
So I'll reiterate that with Xtag, that's maybe an implementation of a library to make web components even easier to use. One awesome thing about that is that we all use the same polyfills. So the 80% of that code is the same. So the performance characteristics you'll see in Xtag or Polymer are going to be very, very alike. And I think that's something that when they get down to native, and most of the library is native, and it's just that layer that they talked about, you're not going to see much difference.
Okay, great. So again, if you have a question in the audience, just line up at the mic and ask it. I'll take another moderator question. So Jonathan Garby, a heavy web platform docs contributor, is asking one of the highest voted questions. Can Polymer and the work in progress standards is based on perform with a small enough difference in rendering compared to server-generated pages? Again, performance.
Let me take a stab at this one as well. So the way I think of it is that the web platform is a series of tools. It's a series of APIs and capabilities that you can use. What Web Components does is it adds a number of tools on the end. But what I've found personally and other people as they explore using Web Components and imagining this future is that a lot of the best practices we have found have turned out to be local maxima. So server-side rendering is the example where it's just received wisdom at this point that like you're going to need to do server-side rendering to get really fast initial load performance. Actually, a number of folks internally who have explored web components and the future of web components very in depth have found that actually it might be the answer that what you should do is cache your component definitions very heavily client side and pass down something that has just semantic looking markup and it inflates locally. So I think what's exciting about all this stuff is the addition of a few more tools on the end sometimes upsets a lot of our these best practices we found and allows us to find a much better place somewhere else.
I'll say too, with the ability with HTML imports is we can actually change the way we deliver applications. So you can think about an app that has like the bare bones minimum. You deliver that to the user right in a second or something. Like that is this thing they need to see right away. And then using imports, you can effectively like offload a lot of the rest of the app and load things on demand. So it does change the way we sort of structure apps. The second part to this is there's nothing stopping you from just having a server that outputs a bunch of custom HTML markup. If you had a server that outputted like a megabyte of HTML, you're going to have a problem. Like that's going to be slow. There's nothing changes in the world of custom elements. The difference is that what happens is things get activated on the client side. It's ultimately a client side technology.
Again, questions? Just hit the mic. Does Polymer HTML imports implementation load imported HTML files asynchronously like AMD.js? Who's got this one?
All right. So AMD modules and HTML imports, which is really what the question is about, are different things. One is about JavaScript, and I don't actually know too much about it. And then there's HTML imports, which is actually HTML. That said, the underlying technology of HTML imports has an async attribute. If you go that route, things become very difficult very quickly, but it's totally an option.
One bit of information I do have with this, in speaking with Dave Herman at Mozilla, which I did frequently, is that we're actually talking about having a module tag potentially inside of HTML imports that will allow you, it already has its own DAG, so it does do some dependency resolution, but the module tag will allow you to do things that are very, very AMD-esque, because as you know, modules coming in ES6 are essentially a form of AMD, provide a lot of the same features, so that's coming in HTML imports.
So the next question was similar. Does it play well with AMD modules? I think it's kind of covered, but
I just want to say too, like AMD and JavaScript modules is a technology that loads JavaScript. With imports, you can load CSS, HTML, everything. It's a different way to deliver Unity dependencies in the world of web components. So it's fundamentally a different thing to think about. But as Daniel said, there's explorations of like how to combine these two technologies. I think when we have more capabilities in JavaScript, like modules and classes and all this cool stuff that we're totally promised in ES6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, 11, we'll eventually be able to combine a lot of stuff. And everything is actually at the lowest level has been thought about. I promise you. People are actually exploring different ways to what does implementing ES6 classes look like in the world of custom elements. That is something that started from day one and it's been going on. The conversations are there.
Cool. All right, let's take an audience question.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Philip. I have a question. So, microphone beeping. Okay. Okay, I think we need to pull this here. Is that better? That's right. I think I have to talk really quietly.
Yeah, we'll repeat the question.
How does a library like Polymer, how does it interact with existing model view controller frameworks? So if I'm already using Backbone or Angular, how can I use web components? Because it seems to do a lot of things that those frameworks do now. I actually got a bit I felt a bit weird when you used that tag to pull in data from a server, because usually you would do that through a model, and you how do you see that working in the future?
Okay. Can you maybe repeat the question? How does it work with other client libraries, Backbone, so on?
Matt, you covered this, right?
I'm happy to talk.
Okay, I'm getting all the hard ones. Like I said, right, Polymer integrates with existing technologies relatively well if they're just using the elements, right? And where else should I go with that?
Well, it sounds great.
Started well.
Yeah, so one thing to point out is that Polymer elements and these MVC frameworks, they're not mutually exclusive by any means, right? They do work together. And there's lots of different ways that you can build your application, right? So we're not trying to say, hey, always use core Ajax. It's just a thing that we created. We think it's really awesome. We think it's a nice way to work with Ajax, but it's up to you guys, how you want to actually build your application. So if you want to leverage it, by all means, please do. But there's lots of ways to skin that cat, I think.
All right, let's take another audience question.
Yeah, I have two quick questions. So the first one, there's a bunch of imports up there, and I think everyone's kind of thinking the same thing. It's a bunch of HTTP requests. What is the current state of bundling these all together so you can get it down to one HTTP request while preserving encapsulation and all of that stuff? The second question is, there was a great demo, an extract demo of a auto-sizing text area element. can that currently be submitted with a form, like the value attribute of that element? Does the native form browser element know to extract that? And like you can extend a native element, but does it go the other way where you can, because it's being extended from a text area, does the form element know to get the value when submitting the form?
Do the second one. Okay.
So yeah, in Xtag we support, there's actually two definitions. I don't know if we went over this in any of the talks. When you use an element that inherits from a native element, there's the is equals syntax, the is attribute. So if you had a text area, you could say text area is your tag and then is equals super text area. In that case, you would be able to use the same prototype, and it inherently a value from an input or something like that would actually post with the form it's in. So that's all baked in. And some people even like to use their own text area input inside of an actual custom element name. So either way, you get that.
So back to the first question, how to optimize for a limited number of requests. So a few things. One, this is one of those classic cases where Polymer is not taking away any of your current toys. So it just works like everything else does. You can actually pass it through those parsers. That said, we also have a tool called Vulcanizer, which we're writing, which is out there today and has documentation to specifically that knows how to deal with Polymer elements and can combine them into a single CSS file, single JS file, and single HTML file, and can optionally pull out the JS into an external file for CSP environments. So we're working on the tooling, but it shouldn't really break the current tools anyway.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, like, this is a really important point. Like, the web development best practices don't change in the world of web components. So what you didn't see tonight was the ability to, instead of having your script tag inline and your element, you can totally reference an external script. Instead of having your style sheets inline and a style tag in your element, you can totally reference a style sheet. So this is great because you can use things like minifiers, grunt tasks, right? You can write your elements in CoffeeScript for all we care, right? It's about you and your productivity. And it's just, it doesn't really change the way we develop. It kind of just changes the way you think about building apps.
All right, so I'm going to take a quick lightning question here. Are there plans to support IE 8, 9, 10 Android browser? Quick answer.
Yep. So IE 10 is supported. So Polymer, we didn't do this particularly well in the presentations, but the last two versions of every major browser are supported. So IE 8 and IE 9 are not included in that. And then the other exception is the Android browser, which is also not included in that. So that's a relatively straightforward one.
So one note on that is IE actually had a hook that would, when I was doing the polyfill, we had split polyfills, then they agreed to just merge and use the same one. You would be able to do it if they hadn't got rid of HTC files and CSS behaviors in IE 8. Oddly enough, it's like this skip ground where it's up to 7, they skip it in 8, and then 9 has all these affordances that are standard web. So it's kind of not possible.
All right, so audience question.
So going back to performance, I just see that people put together a bunch of components on the page because it's nice and easy, and maybe you have 20 of them, and they all include 20 different copies of jQuery, and they're all maybe different versions of jQuery all on that same page. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so HTML imports have a deduping feature. It's currently based off of the absolute URL. So if you have different versions or they come from different CDNs, that's going to be a problem. There's already a bunch of work in the spec to try and address that as well and do it relatively quickly. That said, there's nothing that prevents you from doing that today on the web. So there are certain, making something very, very easy allows you to also make mistakes very, very easily, and I'll totally admit to that. But for the most part, we're not making this any, it's not an additional problem. That said, the ability of HTML imports to dedupe is pretty awesome. If we can get it to do it in other aspects, that'll be great too. And if you're including 5 versions of jQuery on your page, you're probably in trouble anyway.
Cool. Take a quick question here. Will AngularJS and Polymer merge in the future?
Okay, I'll take that one. So I think Angular is a great example of one of the frameworks of today that's done an amazing job of building a very, very effective framework. One thing that's important to remember, and I think Matt hit on this in his talk, is that with web components, the world is a very different place. So things that were created before the web components revolution may have to rethink some of the things in this new world. So Polymer is a great example where it's It's been born in this new world, assuming web components and being able to design for that. I think it's really exciting to watch the Angular team talk about using things like Shadow DOM and other aspects of web components. I imagine that over time, a number of different frameworks will start sort of embracing this web components revolution. So, and Ember as well, as Daniel points out.
Okay. We'll take an audience question.
Hi, thanks for doing this. What kind of testing strategy would you recommend?
So we have actually the engineer who's built our testing
We know
infrastructure
people.
here.
We know people.
Daniel, who's one of the Polymer engineers.
I had my backpack on, ready to go. So I'm Daniel. I work on the Polymer team. How we've been testing our elements so far is we've been using Mocha and Chai and just doing regular tester and development style tests. We find that for the most part, what we write is a UI for our elements, and that's you can write tests for get committed style and see that your elements got the styling correctly, but we really don't have a good story for I changed this one little thing here. How different is it on the screen? We really maybe need some sort of it would be great if we had some sort of primitive on the platform that compared screenshots perhaps of elements as we built them. But I mean, so far it's just your standard tests. Oh yeah, we to be able to actually test some elements in a real browser environment, a member of our team wrote a plugin to Mocha that spins up iframes, so we can run our tests, launch browsers with Karma, and put our elements in pages, make sure that they are individually they run without colliding with each other by putting them in iframes. And it's a little slow because iframes aren't super quick to spin up, but we can run our full test suite in about 5 minutes, and it's not the end of the world. And it would be really great if we had more primitives in the platform for all the Blink engineers watching.
So one thing we've done, now some other person wrote this, like a backend guy, so I can't really speak to the detail, but I know we have tests in Xtag that do Slimer and WebDriver over Sauce Labs and do actually take a screenshot. I don't know how extensible that is. So if you check the repository, maybe it works really easily, maybe it doesn't, I can't speak to that, but it is one way that we try to do sort of GUI testing.
All right, so we've got 3 final audience questions, if they can be short and sweet.
How do you handle testing of web of accessibility for web components?
Oh. Don't go anywhere.
So I actually, yeah, and I don't. So I do most of the accessibility testing as it is right now. I also work with some members of the Chrome team who are in the accessibility working groups, like the ARIA spec and the platform something. The one that talks to screen readers and those people who implement screen readers. So the good news is that even with Shadow DOM scoping mechanism, screen readers generally support that. The ARIA spec allows for actually just even if you were to open Chrome and turn on the flag that says show user agent Shadow DOMs, which shows you how native elements are built. If you open up an input for date time, you can see that all of the native widgets in Chrome actually use the accessibility features of ARIA. So you can see that they are roll for a calendar, and they say what their controls are. So that's already working today. And then when we test, a very nice member of the Chrome team just finished wrapping up the accessibility developer toolkit extension for Chrome, so you can run audits on your elements that run against the full ARIA test suite. So we've just started using that. And the widgets, the elements we work on, I go through a manual pass right now of just making sure they've got the proper roles and they look good in a screen reader. But yeah, as soon as everybody can start implementing that.
Okay, final 2 quick questions and quick answers. Steve.
Question will be quick. I don't know about the answer. This is more of a philosophic question. I know it's early days for sort of Polymer and especially web components. Where do you guys, or collectively or individually, see sort of for web components going in terms of standardization and specifically for editorializing in terms of central repository, or kind of let community decide what's going to be the ultimate way to find things and detect things? Is it more the Ruby model that's like Wild Wild West, or kind of the Python sort of everything comes from CPAN kind of?
So I'll take, I think there's 2 parts to that. On the standardization side, for the specs for the web components platform APIs like custom elements and Shadow DOM, those have been going on in W3C for a number of years. I think they're going very well. On the other front, for the community of how people will talk about web components, I was really encouraged by the works I know and others have been doing at webcomponents.org in particular. I think that's a really good first step. It's a good place for people to share, for component authors and framework authors to share their best practices, to try to come to terms on like exactly how they work so that they can be used interoperably. And I imagine that something like that could grow over time to be a place that that developers could go to find web components as well. I think Jan as well has shown with his with what he showed off that there will be a number of different places to find these things. I think it'll be really healthy for the ecosystem.
So I've actually been talking with Addy. I don't know if you know the guy. Works at Google, does lots of web component stuff. We talked with folks from Opera in a meeting a little while ago about every couple of weeks we have a meeting, and this came up, and we're actually trying to develop a way that you can do sort of like crowdsource code reviews of elements and get them in one central repository on the .org site, and allows you to do like JS manners sort of checks as a community. So that could be good.
So I think it's really encouraging how far we've already come, even though it's a very fledgling ecosystem. So I think that's a good sign for the future.
All right, the final question of the evening is by one of the authors of this fine book, Sean Bennett.
So my question has to do with...
Only $39.99.
My question is about attributes as components. For example, it'd be nice to have, like if you're doing internationalization, have a translate attribute you can put on any web component, and it's not just a single component. Is that something that's possible with web components or with any of the platforms like Xtags or Polymer?
So you mean custom attributes in general?
So for example, he means a mix-in. So if you have
as an example, there's a plugin for Angular called Angular getText, and you can just stick a translate attribute onto an element, and it will translate it and do a bunch of getText magic under the hood.
I think this exact question actually came up on Polymer Dev today or yesterday, and the answer that somebody has given so far, I don't know if it's a canonical one or not, was that you could choose to implement the behavior on a base class and then inherit from that for other things. But the design of web components, as I understand it, and I don't know all the particulars as well enough, would make it, you couldn't just have like a special attribute that you sort of mix into lots of different elements.
So we actually, in Xtag, we have the mixins and the pseudos features would allow for this sort of thing. So you could say translate this attribute, and then that reflects in data, or a mixin that's for translate. It would still require, you'd have to do some coding. There's no thinking around it right now. It's possible.
Okay, I think we're going to have to close it. Thanks for the great questions. So there were more questions on the moderator. I trust that this excellent panel will go in there and add some answers over the next few days. So we're running a little over time, so we have a little bit of a logistical challenge here. We want to do the raffle. Then I'm going to ask you, because security is trying to get everyone out of the room, I'm going to ask you nicely to basically grab your plates, cups, bottles, and stuff, so we don't spend here till 1 o'clock picking those up, and then just kind of go out of the building. You can go down. That would be great. So before we do that, raffle time, wanted to quickly say thanks to all the people on the live stream. Thanks for tuning in. don't forget to tune in for the next event. It's already on our website. I see that 88 people already signed up just tonight when we told you. So 88 people, we're going to have about a cap of about the same amount, so definitely sign up quick. This will be publicly announced to all of the members of the group a little bit later this week, so get in there while you can. So thanks again for those on the live stream for tuning in, and we'll go on to the raffle.